see. Are we live? I can't hear me, so I don't know if y'all can hear me. Somebody in the Oh, okay. My mic is not muted. Can anybody in the chat let me know if you can hear me? I want to make sure we're good. I want to make sure we're live before we just get started. I guess it would help if I could see the chat. Deacon Fatal was good. Tanya D, y'all are both here. Yeah, I made both of y'all mods, so y'all should be good. Kimmy Locker helping us out. If y'all don't know, Kimmy Locker is the MVP of live streams. Mind you, I'm just talking. I don't know if anybody can hear me. Let me see. Okay, I can hear me. So we're good. We're good. All right, so I'm gonna just start adding people on. We've this is take 2 of Sunday service. Uh we've got a bit of an outline here. It's gonna be a little bit different than what we had planned, but in general, it's gonna be the same for the most part. Tiny, okay, you can hear me. Cool, cool, cool. The chat is so delayed. That really sucks. But I found out it's delayed because of closed captions. We try to make sure we have closed captions on. So, oh, I was outside, so uh, don't need that. All right, so I think we got everybody backstage here. So I'm gonna just start adding people. First of all, welcome to the stream. Let me make sure we're live on Instagram. Okay, we are. It's good to see everybody. Thank y'all for joining us. And I'm gonna start adding folks. First of all, okay, I see somebody driving. That's wild. That's wild. Make sure you stay safe while you're driving. I see you backstage driving. All right, just please stay safe. Don't hurt nobody out there. Don't hurt yourself. I'm a first of all, I'm gonna add my co-host on here, Sorma, um, to the live. There we go.
I'm not muted anymore. Can you hear me?
Okay. Now we're doing the same thing again where I can't hear Sorma, so I gotta figure out. I don't remember what I did last time. Last time I just started pushing buttons and I
She forgives you. Can I hear me?
doing the same thing again where I can't hear Sorma. I can do a lot of things now. What I did last time. Last time I just started pushing buttons and
Can you hear me now?
I can hear Sorma, but I can hear you from like 3 places. So give me 1 second. All right, Sorma, say something for me.
Hello, 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 hello.
Amen. I can hear you. All right. I can hear you. All right. Chat, can you just let me make sure that didn't make sense? Chat, let me know if you can hear Sorma.
I'm trying to see too.
You can hear. Okay, you can hear everybody. Sounds good.
Yay.
All right, Sorma, they can hear you. I can hear you. All right. So first of all, welcome to this live. Okay, I can still hear me in like 3 places. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I know why. There we go. I think I got it. I think I got it. I think I got it. I think I got it, y'all. All right. So
Smalls, is your phone near you?
it is.
Let
Wow.
me in.
Oh, I see. I see. I got you. I got you. You should be in now. I got you. All right. All right. All right. All right. Why good, y'all? What up, everybody? Smalls here. My pronouns are she, her, first of all, and I'm coming to you from Chumash and Tonga land, better known as Southern California. And first of all, thank you for meeting us here at the intersection where we've been exploring the intersection of culture and faith, specifically the intersection of Black and Sikh. So welcome or welcome back. And I'm going to go ahead and let my co-host Sorma introduce himself.
Hiya, I am Sorma. I'm coming to you from Karankawa land. I can never say it right. Karankawa land, down here in South Texas, better known as Galveston, Texas. And my pronouns are he, him. And yeah, I'm ready to get the show on the road.
Yeah, actually, I think you say it well. Like, I think you say it right every time. I mean, I think so because the first time you said, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I could pronounce that. So I think you said it right. If somebody knows better, please let me know. I always try to look up the pronunciations, but I think that is correct. Um, all right, so today we're just going to talk about. We've got a couple of well, a few. We've got a few people who have experience with both the Christian church as well as Sikh Gurudwaras, and we really wanted to do an episode where we compare and contrast the two, right? Because that's something that we talk about a lot, especially being Black folks who come from the Black church. There's distinct differences. There are some similarities, but there are some distinct differences, and so we really want to talk about that and use that as an opportunity or like a vehicle to discuss our experience as converts. Converts. I say quote unquote converts because sometimes when we say converts, I don't know, people like to play word games and pretend like they don't know what we're talking about. But essentially it just means coming from one religion or faith to another, or from no faith to another. That's all we mean. We don't mean anything extra special about it. That's all we mean when we say converts. Okay. So we got some folks who were either raised Christian, grew up practicing Christianity, and at some point left that and started practicing Sikhi. Now, just so y'all know, you might have seen it. If anybody saw the lead-in video, you will know that Sikhi doesn't have a special process. So, like Judaism is a good example where there's this like kind of long, very intricate process of becoming a Jew, of converting to Judaism. And Sikhi doesn't have that. Sikhi, I remember when I looked up like what's the process, of converting, they were just gotta believe these things. You believe those things, congrats, you're sick. And I was like, well, that's uneventful, but that is what it is. So conversion, quote unquote. But we have folks who were raised in Christianity and then started practicing Sikhi at some point. So we're gonna bring them on in just a little bit. But Sorma, real quick, give us just like the elevator pitch of you going from raised in Christianity to converting to Sikhi, because I know you talked about it a little bit in the video premiere, and it's the video that'll be coming out later, so you'll hear his full story there. But just give us like a brief where you started, how you ended up finding Sikhi, and then where you are now.
So I started in the hand clapping, foot stomping, tongue talking Pentecostal Church of God in Christ. And I was basically, I wouldn't say born into it because my mom is not really on the was is not really on the church going side. She's on the prayerful prayer warrior style life, but she doesn't really go to church. My aunt was the person that started getting me into church and taking me to church with her on Sunday and stuff like that. And I was basically raised on Kojic doctrine, and then I myself didn't get as serious into the church until I was in my preteens. So that's when I started getting really serious about God and stuff. And so, but at the same time, we had a bunch of internal conflicts. One was a sexuality conflict, another was, do I actually believe this stuff? The reading the Bible and seeing certain verses and being like, what? Why? Like, uh, so yeah. And then um, got into high school, going through puberty, all these different changes, kind of reconciling with myself about, okay, so this is who I am. So this is what I like. So this is this, that, and the third. And it all kind of came to a head in junior year. And then that summer, that was that when Vine was launched? I don't know. I don't exactly remember when Vine was launched, but I was following content creators like Just Rain and all this kind of stuff, and Superwoman and stuff. And that's why I first got introduced to a Sikh or seeing a Sikh. And then I started the my junior year. I was in world geography class, and a lot of people learn about Sikhi through world geography class, even though they teach it wrong. So that's where I first learned about it, and then I started, looking into it in the summer, and then it all really came to a head when one night I was like, "Yeah, trigger warning." I was like, "Yeah, screw this. I'm over it. I'm ready to depart. Like I'm ready to delete myself." And I came so close to deleting myself, but then I was researching Sikhi a few days prior, and I left the English translation of Guru Granth Sahib Ji open, uh, and it swiped at the moment that I was getting ready to delete myself, and what I read convinced me to not do such, and that was at 12:14 a.m. on July the 1st of 2017, and at 12:15 I decided to become a Sikh, and that's pretty much what happened. Uh, yeah.
Got you. Um, So yeah, a couple things. So for those who don't know, I remember Nuv and I talking about this. Nuv is our editor, right? And so Nuv is a Sikh, but he is a Punjabi Sikh. So he was born into a family of Sikhs, and so it's interesting because we're always like leaving notes and random bits and stuff for Nuv, and I always wonder like how he's gonna like react to some of the stuff, some of the shenanigans that we get up to when we're recording. But I remember when I first found out that Sorma was raised in a Kojic family, I was floored and shocked because I've known Sorma for several years. We've talked about his story a number of times, but I didn't know he was Kojic. For those who don't know, Kojic, Church of God in Christ, right? It's the acronym Church of God in Christ. Pentecostal, if I'm not mistaken.
Pentecostal holiness.
Very, very intense. I mean, I I will go so far as to say just a couple steps from cult. Just I won't call it a cult, but just a couple steps, just not that far. And for anybody who saw my interview with Kat Black, I remember, I said, yeah, I was raised Christian, but I was raised Baptist, but not like Southern Baptist, like California Baptist, a little more chill. And I said something about like, women were allowed to wear pants to church and things like that. And people were like, "What are you talking about? You can wear pants in the Christian church." And I was like, "Oh, so you don't know about all Christian denominations, I see." Because growing up, my granny, it was like every Sunday she was shocked that we were wearing pants because every Sunday after church we visited my granny who went to her church. We went to our church, and she was like, "That's what y'all wore to church." Every Sunday, it's like, "Yes, Granny, this is what we wore to church," like. But she could not believe it because there are very strict rules for Kojic. It's very, very intense, and so one, I was very surprised that Sorma was only 17 when he first decided to convert. Two, that he was Kojic, so he was 17, leaving what is to me only a couple steps away from a cult, which is really intense. If you heard anything about like the Mormon faith or fundamentalism or anything like that, it's just kind of a different version, really. Again, I'm not calling it a cult. I wouldn't say it's exactly a cult, but I will say that some if you know the bite model, some church some churches, not like the whole Kojic faith, but some churches do fit the bite model a little too closely.
Mm.
And my point in emphasizing that was just that that's a big deal for somebody to leave the Kojic faith, especially at 17, and decide that against all odds, against the world, basically, that you're going to practice this whole other faith that has very few Black people, that most people who are not raised in this ethno religion do not understand. So I just really wanted to emphasize that because it's wild, it's intense. And I remember Nuv, like, I actually wanted to edit that part out where I kind of got like, I was just like floored, and I was just like kind of got up on my seat, and like Nuv was laughing about it. But I wanted to edit it out because I was like, "Oh my God, I'm being so ridiculous." But I was just genuinely that shocked. Like, I wasn't trying to be funny. I was just like, "You left a Kojic church at 17? Are you okay? Like, what is like?" I don't know. It was just wild to me. So hopefully you guys will get to see that episode pretty soon. But yeah, okay. So for me, this I actually converted around the same time as Sorma for very different reasons. It was a very different place in my life. This was after college. I left Christianity in around 2010. My niece had come out, and the way that my family was responding to it and reacting to it was really strange to me because it wasn't a surprise. It shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody, right? Like, this is something that had been talked about in my family from the time that my niece was very, very young. And so, the fact that there was just like, "Oh my God, can you believe?" It's like, yes, I don't understand why you can't believe it. Like, what is happening right now? And I just really saw a side of my family that I didn't recognize. And that was kind of like the last straw for me. So, as somebody who had gone to Christian schools from preschool through university, I went to a Black Catholic university in New Orleans. The more I learned, the more I studied theology, the more questions I had that couldn't be answered, the more things I couldn't reconcile. And then my niece coming out and my family reacting to it in that way really, even at a time where I didn't even know really that I was queer myself, it just was kind of like the last straw for me. And I was like, "I'm done. This does not make sense. I'm trying to make something, a square peg fit into a round hole. This is not going to work." And so I left for a couple years. And like I said, I always say I was going to do the spiritual but not religious thing. And then what I missed was the community, the fellowship. There were some aspects of practicing Christianity and practicing my faith that I missed, because I still believe in God. I was still a believer. I just didn't know how I felt about. And initially, when I first left Christianity, I was like, "I still believe in Jesus too." That's anyways. Um, but I left, and then I had this 2-year gap, and so I had time to like sort of kind of understand myself without a particular religion, without the structure of a particular faith practice. And then when I realized, oh, I'm missing these things, I kind of went on this journey to try to find a new religion. And I searched the ones that I knew at the time and the ones that I Googled. And believe it or not, even though Sikhi is like depending on which source you look at, is the top fourth or fifth largest religion in the world, it's still so unknown. It's wild to me, just how unknown Sikhi is. I remember first learning about it in high school in a world religions class, and then kind of forgot all about it. And again, never really understood Sikhi as something that could be for anybody who wasn't South Asian, Indian, Punjabi. And so long story short, I took a quiz. The I kept taking the quiz because I just couldn't believe the results. Sikhi kept popping up as like one of the top results. I did some Google searching, sounded too good to be true. And again, fast forward, I practiced it for a while before I really told anybody outside of my immediate circle. I was trying to avoid the too good to be true phase because I just knew like the other shoe was gonna drop. And I ended up like I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. I didn't make it a full year. I said I was going to practice it for a year. I didn't make it a full year, and I was like really sold. And so, this actually, when we really compare our stories, this was happening around the same time, but we were just in very different places in our lives as this was happening, and we converted for I think very different reasons, and we came to Sikhi and from very different places. So. Um, Okay, so I just want to give you guys a background so you know like kind of where we're starting from. And now I'm going to let me see if Ray, are you ready? We had Deep in here earlier. I'm not actually sure what happened. Ray, you're ready. Okay, so we're gonna bring Ray on. Ray was here last time. We had a really dope conversation. I'm gonna bring Ray on, let him introduce himself, and tell you a little bit more.
All right.
There we
Hello.
go.
Can everyone hear me as well?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, I guess I'll do kind of the same thing. Again, for everyone, I go by Ray. You can, as far as pronouns go, I'm comfortable being called whatever you feel like that day. Honestly, um, personally, but other than that, for me, it's funny. Some of my story is a little bit similar. In relation to my background, except for not Kojic, although I definitely knew a whole lot about it for sure. Being from Houston, Texas, I definitely knew of it. And I've actually been to a couple of churches, but I was definitely very, very Southern Baptist. So there's some definitely some spillover there too. You
Mm.
know, Southern Baptists kind of want to be Kojic a little bit too here and
Yeah,
there.
because y'all be having Baptist fits and stuff. Y'all
Yeah.
just trying to be us.
Yes, indeed.
Do we know which
So
came first? Do we know the history? That might be a whole nother deep dive.
that's a
I'm
good
kind of
question.
curious, but I'm wondering
Oh,
who
that's
borrowed what from who because there is some overlap.
Yeah.
And as somebody who is like, I feel like on the tail end of the Southern Baptist, like I call it California Baptist. I'm very interested to know like what came first, Kojic
Yeah.
or Southern Baptist. But go ahead, go ahead.
hmm So for me, I was one of those kids that was like heavily, heavily invested once I learned about the church and everything else like that. Because I'm a person that I think it's the ADHD in me, but I super hyper focus on something when I'm into it. If I say I'm about this, I'm about that 100%. And so I got heavily involved in the church. You know, I wanted to be there all the time. I went there with my grandmother. There was a point in time when I decided, maybe I want to be a pastor, something else like that. One of my uncles was called; he was supposed to be a pastor. All of those things. I want to do this too. And then I believe around the time that I got a little bit older, surprisingly, what started to make me question things was I'm also a super inquisitive person. I always have been. I got questions. I need them answered. I like to debate. So much so that some of my friends will tell you I very much enjoy playing devil's advocate just for the hell of it. So, so I started to have issues with the fact that sometimes I ask questions based on things that I was reading in the Bible because I did read it completely. But I felt like a lot of times I would get hit with, don't question God. And I'm like, but I'm not questioning God, I'm questioning you. But
That part.
so, um, So that started to be the first thing for me, and then I think as I entered into middle to high school, and I started to discover myself as far as my sexuality and everything else like that goes too,
Right.
that became an issue, especially since one of the churches I've been going to for the longest time, I had a specific sermon where the pastor just went in one day. And I left church that day, trying my hardest to pray it away and all that other kind of stuff. And I remember getting to the same place that you mentioned. There was a point in time where I did want to trigger warning, self delete as well. And I think when I did decide to come out at, and a different thing saved me. Whitney Houston saved me, but
She did say she believed that the
it was a
children were the future.
It was a Whitney Houston song that made me decide to go ahead and hold on. But because of that, I was like, all right, you know what? If I'm gonna do this, I'm not gonna continue to deal with something that's weighing so heavily on me. So I decided to leave altogether. I became very angry with religion. Period. I was one of those angry atheists for a little while. Um, and then as I kind of got over my church hurt and all of that a little bit more so, then I started to kind of ease up a little bit more, and I recognized that I did still feel believe in something. And that's when I mentioned in the last one that we did as well. That's when I started to say, well, I mean, is it fair for me to throw everything out when I haven't really looked at anything else? And so that started me on a journey where I decided, and this was when I was still in Houston, Texas, before I joined the military. I decided that I was going to every week I would go to a different service of some kind. And so I've gotten to see quite a bit. And it also developed an interest to me in theology as a whole. But then it was when I got here to where I'm currently living in Colorado that I was deciding to continue doing that. And surprisingly enough, I was looking for a different type of place, and a local Gurdwara came up, and I knew of Sikhs, but I didn't know much about Sikhi. So I looked into it a little bit further, and I was like, I'll go check this out. I haven't seen it. Let's see what that's about. And then as I Googled it a little bit more too, I realized I knew of someone that was, and I was like, huh, is this something I can be though? You know, because that's my first thought. I'm like, well, the only representations I'm seeing here don't look like me. So is this something for me? Well, how would this? So as I looked into things a little bit further, I started to realize that a lot of what it means to be, a lot of tenets, everything else aligned with who I am as a person already. And that's when I said, okay, yeah, this is it. This is it for me. This is where I'm comfortable. So
Nice,
now it's been 2.5 years for me.
Mm.
nice, nice, nice. Okay, okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I am it's interesting the number of like denominations and like offshoots and branches of Christianity that
Yeah.
there are.
There's like
Um
5,000 in
yeah,
the country.
yeah, I I struggle like with how much, because as much as I'm like I believe in freedom of religion, and as much as that was like a major thing for me, it's one reason that I loved Sikhi so much, and one reason that I left Christianity was this idea that like there's only one right way to do this thing, but some people might not even get the opportunity to come to hear about this thing. It just didn't like gel with me. However, as somebody raised in Christianity and who has a very special understanding of how Christianity is practiced, especially here in the West, especially here in the U.S.
Hmm.
And still recovering from a little bit of religious trauma, I struggle, right? Like I went through a period of being like, I don't understand how anybody could be Christian. This is just ridiculous. This makes no sense. You know, like because of it's almost like sometimes you know too much for your own good, or like, you know, like
Yes.
the more I learned, it was supposed to be like fortifying my faith and my belief, but it was doing the opposite, right? And like um so I struggle because I want to be respectful of people's faith and people's choice to practice whatever faith they want to, or whatever faith practice is right for them. um but yeah, I question. I'm like, why are there so many denominations? Why are there so many offshoots and branches and think that the really the bottom line is that people are people, humans are humans, and you know, we can get more into that maybe another time. But okay, cool. All right, so we have, I don't know if Neek is ready, but I see Deep in the background. Deep, are you ready? Come through. All right, we're gonna bring Deep on. Let's see if we can add.
Hey,
Yeah, there we go.
I
All right, Deep.
hey,
And
nice
then
to meet everyone.
before before we get too far, if somebody in the Black and Sikh community, whether it's in like the group chat or something, somebody can keep an eye on the Instagram chats. I'm trying to keep an eye on them, but if anybody's out there that can keep an eye on the Instagram chats and see if there's any questions out there that we might miss, please feel free to let us know. Um, but yeah, thank you everybody who's joining us. We're streaming right now on YouTube and on Instagram. So thank you to everybody who's joining us from Instagram. We really appreciate y'all. Feel free to ask questions, chime in, do whatever. But okay, yeah, Deep. So I met Deep online, uh, and when I was like, "Does anybody have any experience with both the Christian church and with Gurdwaras and Sikhi?" Deep was like, "I do," and I was like, "Yes, perfect. We want as many experiences and diverse voices as possible." And to be mindful, I want to be clear when I say diverse voices, I don't just mean like I think people think race and that's it, but here even as you've heard these stories we have three completely different stories, right, despite the fact that we are all Black people, because why Black people are not a monolith. And so when I say diverse voices, I mean all kind of diversity, whether it's gender, race, cultural background, faith, age, like whatever, all kind of experiences. So when I met Deep, I was like, you would be perfect for this. So yeah, Deep, tell us a little bit about yourself, give us your name, you got your pronouns on there, so yeah, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I think this is so interesting. I'm learning so much, and I appreciate that you're sharing your own stories and identifying that you're not a monolith. Like your individual upbringing and your path in your spiritual and religious life is so different from Sorma's. It's so different from Ray, but it's kind of showing. People that they can have their own path as well. I was born into a Punjabi Sikh family, and I was born in Philadelphia. So I was raised like the only other Sikh person my age was my older brother, and and we went to a school where we were the only Sikh family there. And so Sunday at Gurdwara or at Sikh camps were the only times that we were kind of more surrounded by other Sikh people. But beyond that, we were outsiders. We were very much minorities. And I have some experiences in the Black church from Philadelphia about just kind of, I was always in interfaith spaces, especially in my high school years. I went to Boston, I lived in New York, and eventually I made my way out to the Southwest. So I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that's relevant because Yogi Bhajan, based his kind of institutions out here as well between Albuquerque and Los Angeles. And so there is a fairly large American Sikh population here, or a Sikh population that found its way through Sikh Dharma International and 3HO. And so I've spent some time in those spaces as well, where like I walk into a Gurdwara and the entire Gurdwara is white. And I'm the only non-white Sikh person there. I've had that experience. Also, I've participated in some of the events where it's an entirely international crowd. And so you have people from Latin American communities, and there's Spanish translation going on alongside. You have people from China, and there's Mandarin translation going along alongside. It was actually in that community was the first time I saw people doing American Sign Language and that going along on side. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And that really felt like the type of inclusion and dignity that we're called to think about for all people in Sikhi. And so it seemed to me like parts of that community were living up to their values. Now, that being said, obviously they're going through a lot of reckoning with their own past, and that's a whole other kind of thing. But in terms of, as it relates to this conversation, I met a fair number of Black Sikhs, some who had found Sikhism through 3HO and some who had found it independently. And I found people like Krishna Kaur, who's based in Los Angeles, and she is Black. She's a Black woman. She talks very openly about her experience as a Black woman, and she has practiced Sikhism longer than I've been alive. So, in terms of like, I think that there is this undertone of like the respectability politics of like, if you are Punjabi, then like there's like a certain in-group that you have like as an advantage. And if we're talking about duration of practice, like she's practiced longer than me. So like what, like, you know, what advantage, quote unquote, would exist? And so we can kind of laugh at that whole concept of there being any advantage or this like needing to prove ourselves. Um, and I think it's important for me as a Punjabi Sikh to state, like, I don't speak for all Punjabi people, like not by a long shot, but it's important for me to show up and to listen in the conversation and to listen to the parts that are hard. And to acknowledge that there are times where the community as a whole is falling short of the stated values that we profess and that we pray. But I think also the younger community, because we have been raised in this multicultural environment where it is very natural and second nature to learn about other cultures and even incorporate other cultures into our lives, whether we are part of that culture or not. It doesn't stand out to us so much as being that there should be anything awkward about it. Whereas I think that there are people for whom it's just a new thing. It's just new to them. And that newness, they can kind of transfer the same experience that they have being a quote unquote outsider or minority. Unfortunately, they can transfer onto others. And I think that I was so interested by all of the stories that you've shared so far and kind of you naming that and putting that out in a public space.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I didn't know those things, and that's I always like finding out about a lot of this stuff in real time, but I didn't. So I'm familiar with a few of those things, right? So I'm here in LA, and I am very familiar with 3HO and Sikh Dharma International. It's not how I found Sikhi, but I came to discover 3HO and Sikh Dharma International not too long after I started practicing because of the Gurdwara I ended up going to. And yes, a lot of white Sikhs and very few Punjabi Sikhs. And it's a very diverse crowd of Sikhs. There's a handful of Black, there's a handful of East Asian, there's a handful of Latine Sikhs, but a lot of white Sikhs, right? And Krishna Kaur. I've met Krishna Kaur. I've taken her classes, her yoga classes. And she's actually good friends with my mentor, who is Niran Kaur. And so yeah, so it's so interesting to like hear you speak about all of those things. And I think a lot of people assume that every non-Punjabi person who is a Sikh has found their way to Sikhi through 3HO, Sikh Dharma International, which is just not true. Some, yes. And like you said, Krishna has been practicing longer than I've been alive, right? And so has my mentor. My mentor is a Black woman who has been practicing, again, longer than I've been alive. She's been practicing since the 70s. And and I find it really interesting because I've found that people have a number of Punjabi Sikhs have sort of, I don't know if they think they're like testing me or quizzing me, like, where did you learn about Sikhi? Like, can we have a conversation so I can understand like what you think you believe about Sikhi? Like, no, we can't. Like, what are you doing? Like, no, like, because there's this assumption, which I didn't know initially, right? It was actually Sorma who made me sort of aware that a lot of people just assume that non-Punjabi Sikhs find their way to Sikhi through 3HO, Sikh Dharma International. And so that's where a lot of these questions were coming from. When I started to like push back or respond, I started to find out that's what it is. They're like, well, if you found it through that, then like you don't count or something. Like it's not legit. It's not as real. I don't know. Like it's kind of wild, but I do think it's interesting because not only are these people who are non-Punjabi practicing the true tenets of Sikhi, right? They've been doing it a lot longer than I think any of us here, all of us here have been alive, right? And they've been doing it for a very long time. And so I just think it's very interesting, the assumptions that folks make. And I think that brings me to answer the question when people say like, why do you need to talk about your race? Why do you need to bring up the fact that you're Black? You don't need to talk about it anymore because Sikhs, we're all the same. We're all one. We're all the human race. And while that is lovely, and I think maybe spiritually, I guess I understand what they're trying to say. In reality, that's not how it works. And we know that's not how it works for the simple fact that you're here telling me or making assumptions about my practice, about my faith, about my belief, about what I know and what I don't know, right? The fact that the first thing some people want to do is say like, "Oh, welcome, and here's some resources where you can go learn more about Sikhi." And I'm like,
What
"Sir,
is that based on?
I've been
Like,
here almost a decade. Like the
What's
stuff
that
you're
based
giving
on?
I'm
me,
like, bro, I'm literally teaching your kids Sikhi because you don't know how to teach them.
it's like like what are we doing here? Like what, the fact that there are these assumptions right out of the gate is letting me know that as you sit here and tell me that you don't see a difference, that you don't see
You
my
do.
color, you do
You
in
do.
fact see it, because you would not be making these assumptions, right?
Yep.
I don't know if you guys saw in the video, Sorma says the first time he went to Gurdwara, he was with his white friend, so he didn't have any issues. He didn't have any issues until the second time he went because he was by himself. And I think maybe a lot of people might miss that, but essentially the first time he went, he was really protected by the cover of whiteness, right? Like there's this
Yep.
assumption that comes with whiteness, right? That oh, you're good, you're legit, you're valid because you're with this person. And despite the fact that, like Sorma said, the next time he comes in, he's got on his stars, Kutta, he's fully decked out, looks like any other Sikh. And now they're like, oh, you're here to steal? All right, who are you? Like, why are
Like,
you
what's up?
here? Following folks
Uh,
around and things of
Not
that
too
nature.
long. Probably about another
Hold on
10 to
one
15
second. Let
minutes.
me mute. Okay. Um, so yeah, so there are a lot of assumptions, which I think is just really wild. But we're not gonna hang too much on
Well,
that. We really kind of want to make this like a
yeah,
relatively
and
fun
Sorma
stream.
said that, the week before that happened, there was a white person who went into the Gurdwara and actually did steal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it kind of adds in this other flavor of like, is whiteness really the cover that it should be? And you don't need to be white to kind of be exposed to white supremacy and to kind of learn white supremacy by osmosis, and that you know that there are layers to this. But I think that we can hold two things to be true, that like there is a specificity to the Black experience in America, and that we need to hear more about it, uplift it, listen to the stories. And also at the same time, that Sikhi does preach oneness in the creation. And like both of these things can be true. How can we be more dignified in all of that, I think, is what comes out of these types of conversations.
absolutely, absolutely. I agree 100%. Um, yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. I think it's interesting because I grew up in predominantly white spaces. I find a lot of the like assumptions, especially when I was a lot younger, before I really understood white supremacy in the way that I do now, right? I found a lot of the assumptions that people made based on race to be very interesting, right? Like there's the assumption that Black people steal and that Black people this and Black people that, and we understand why that is, on a fundamental level if you understand white supremacy and at all. And speaking of which, let me say this is the analogy that I used last time. You don't grow up in an English speaking society and not start to pick up English, right? Like you don't grow up your entire life hearing English and not pick up any of it, right? If I just watching every Bollywood movie on Netflix can start to pick up some Hindi, like you're gonna start to pick up some English. And that's the same way with white supremacy and things of that nature, like the effects of colonization. You're going to pick it up. Like it's going to sort of be a part of like who you are. And until you recognize that, and I shouldn't say you, until we recognize that, because it impacts all of us, right? Until we recognize that, we can't really tackle it. We can't unlearn it. We can't begin to resolve these issues and really strive for equality until we're acknowledging, oh, there are some differences here. Oh, there's some, like Dave said, there is some specificity to the Black experience here in the US that maybe doesn't translate in other areas, but that doesn't mean you get to like deny or invalidate that experience, right? Maybe this is a time for you to stop, pause, listen, ask questions, right? Like I said last time, be more curious than you are accusatory, right? So just because something doesn't make sense to you, just because you don't understand it, just because you haven't experienced it. And I find that that's like more of like a human nature type thing. We do this, we love to do this thing where it's like, because we've never experienced it, it cannot possibly be true. We can't imagine it to be reality. I've heard so many people, like if you look at the comment section of our TikTok, I've cleaned a lot of it up, but like the comment sections of our TikTok were like, well, what does he mean somebody said that to him? I that doesn't make any sense. I just can't believe somebody would say that. Well, why can't you believe it? Because nobody's ever said that to me. You're not Black.
Because
Why
Black,
would
honey.
somebody say that to you? But that's what I mean by like, let's pause and like be curious for a second, right? Instead of like that knee-jerk reaction to be like, I've never heard that, that's not a thing. Well, you probably wouldn't have, right? Like, just like somebody who really meant well was like, well, we all experience this, we all experience, but, and I said, hold on, we might all experience issues of some sort, but we don't all have the same experience, right? You're not experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing. I have no doubt that Punjabis, and I've heard it from my queer Punjabi friends and other folks who are dealing with their own sort of issues that they've had growing up in Punjabi culture
Right.
and in the Sikh community, that they have their, so that's not to invalidate, that's not to say like, well, their experience is completely
Yeah.
perfect and nothing's wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, just like you have experiences that you're like, I wish this was different, I wish this would change, we do too. Like, ours is
If I
just
may,
different.
if
Yeah,
I
for
may
sure.
too, one thing that I want to point out too, because I feel like a lot of times you get a lot of people from different backgrounds in general, that will sometimes even leverage maybe a black person that they know, but they could be different culturally, and a lot of times they're not recognizing that still the Black American experience is different.
Right.
If you
And then
don't
there's
know anything about that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
and then there's just like tons of people. I'm surprised. I learned something through interacting with people through the comments, that a lot of people don't understand that like Black American is a culture. Like they don't
Mhm.
understand, like they think that being Black is just a skin color, or oh, you're just labeling yourself this, that, and the third. They don't understand that in America, Black is like a legit culture. When we say Black culture, things like Black church or Black this, Black that, they only see, and it's funny, they like say, oh no, I don't see color. You're literally only seeing the color. Like
Yep.
it's literally the Black experience within America, especially those who are descendants of slaves who don't have the original, who don't have connection to their original ancestry, who the only thing that we know is our experience here in America, which has caused a cultural divide where we can differentiate between a Black American versus an African Sikh. That's why a lot of us have a problem with the term African Sikh. Me personally, I don't, because I've just learned of my heritage, so I wear that term proudly. But when you look at it, I know almost nothing of Nigerian culture. I'm half Nigerian, half Cameroonian. I know nothing of Cameroonian culture. I mostly associate with what I've learned from my people here in the United States of America, and our culture is different that way uh, versus somebody who's actually from Africa, who's lived in those countries, and we have a different experience of life and everything like that. So just want to point out, yes, Black is a culture. Black American is a culture.
Yeah, I think
There's
there
Black.
was a,
Yeah, from my perspective of like just as someone who's not Black, it's like there's Black academia, there's Black music and linguistics, there's Black fashion, there's Black food, there's like Black ways of being that create culture and that have informed American culture broadly. But there is a specificity to Black culture that I think should be pretty like visible or recognizable to most people living in America.
But it
Mhm.
should be
yeah.
visible to everybody because everybody's taken from it. It's
Hello.
especially
Yes.
Well,
uh,
see,
yeah.
this is something that I talked about on Instagram the other day, right? Where I think somebody I saw, I'm not exactly sure what like their ethnic background is, but they did not appear to be Black. But they made a comment about the term woke, and they attributed that to millennials creating that term back in like 2000 something. And I was like, nope. Now, luckily, by the time I saw it, somebody else had already got them together, right? But it's just so interesting. Like every time I hear woke used incorrectly, I cringe because it is a term that we've been using since the 40s, 1940s,
Hello.
40. Okay. It is a
God.
term that Black Americans have been using since the 1940s that has been co opted by the right. We're not get too far into that, but that's
They
just an
literally
example, right?
gentrified the word
And
woke.
yeah, absolutely. And so this, what I try to tell people is, even though that may be an accident, right? I don't think he meant any harm. There are plenty of examples of terms from AAVE that they will attribute to being internet culture or Gen Z language that I'm like, no, that is AAVE, that is African American Vernacular English. You can deny that it is its own language all you want. I'm not going to argue with you about that. You can go holla at Sun Michaud about that. Okay. If you don't know who that is, I will try to find it. And you can look him up. He's a linguistic professor at Harvard. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, this is not unintentional. It is intentional, because the moment that you start denying that this is black culture, the moment that you start trying to strip it away from black culture, then you can appropriate it, then you can
Hmm.
gentrify it, then you can take it and you can claim it as its own thing. You can continue to deny that black Americans actually have a culture. No, we have a culture. Y'all continue to deny it and you continue to take from it, right? That's not accidental, right? I want to get into a few comments, because there's a few comments here. One that really caught my eye. Deacon Fatal said, um, where did it go? I think I started, but I might have accidentally unstarted. Deacon Fatal said something about black culture being exploited. It was on the screen. Oh, we are the most exploited. There we go. Thank you, Kimmy. Good looking out. When I tell y'all, Kimmy's the MVP. Kimmy's the MVP. We're the most exploited culture from the U.S. Exploited is the heaviest word I can use. Yeah, but I think it's accurate, right? That is the nature of black Americans' existence here in this society, right? As the descendant of enslaved people on who built this nation on stolen land. If you wonder why we do a land acknowledgments in the beginning, anytime I'm introducing myself, if I'm gonna say where I'm from, I'm gonna make sure I say this is Chumash and Tonga land, because there were people here before us, right? And even though my ancestors were the one that helped build the country, they built it on stolen land, right? And so acknowledging those things are important, because what I'm not trying to do is pretend like they don't exist. I'm not going to continue to participate in the erasure of people who were already here, even though that's what they're doing to black people. And it's one of the reasons that I do not use African American, or I will tell people that, hey, I'm Black American, is because I need you to understand. I want you to connect the dots that Black
Same.
American is a culture, it's mine, and
Same.
it's here. Whether I ever find out my connection to Africa or not, that's lovely. I'm still Black American. That's my culture. That's a
Same.
culture that influences me, and that's the culture that I continue to influence. It's a two-way street, right? And
Yeah.
that's very important for me. It's the same reason that I continue to say that I am cis and that I am a woman and that my pronouns are she, her, even though I'm gender nonconforming and gender queer, and that technically falls under the trans umbrella. So if I really wanted to, I could identify as trans. The fact of the matter is, it's important for me to say this is also what a woman looks like. I feel like a woman. I am a woman. I identify with my pronouns. I identify with my womanness. I love the body that I'm in, and even though it might not fit your picture of what a woman is, this is also what a woman is. And so the same thing is true for me when it comes to Black American. This is my culture. This is who I am. It is what it is, whether you like it or not, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. And I think that's really what we're talking about here, is like, it's making people uncomfortable to have to admit, you know, that a Black American is its own thing, is its own culture, because then you have to start to admit that you've been stealing from this culture, that you've been denying things about this culture, that you've been erasing this culture this
Hmm.
entire time, or participating in those things. Um, there's a few more comments here that I wanted to get to. I'm not sure if there are some on Instagram, but there's some here on YouTube that I definitely want to get to while we wait for, I think Neek was driving, so we're gonna add Neek into the conversation as soon as they get back.
Shannon
Um,
Boston.
let's see. Tanya D says, I've always questioned organized religion, but I question everything and everyone. Yes, yes. And I think that is a valid and great place to be. I think that is something that I love about. I'm gonna try to stop like just comparing, things to Christianity, because I do know a good bit about like other religions, but I always try to be mindful like what I speak on, with authority. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about, and just Christianity is just the easiest one to go to. But that's just something that a difference that I have noticed, right? Like when I was a Christian, kind of like Ray said, right? Like when I was a Christian, asking certain questions would get like, don't worry about it, just believe, just have faith. Like it was just kind of this pushback, and it was, and I find that with a lot of organized religions. That was a problem that I continue to run into. But I think that that's what you should do. And even when I was a Christian, I remember when they had me fill in. They had me fill in for a teacher who had like an emergency for Bible study, and so I happened to be there with my parents at their church, and this was out long after I had already converted to Sikhi. I don't know if they knew that, but they probably wouldn't have had me teach. But I definitely ignored the book, and we just had a conversation. And I was like, y'all in high school, y'all getting ready to go to college. Let's just have a conversation here. And I started asking them questions and just questioning their faith. Oh, you believe what? Why do you believe that? Why do you? And just like really drilling down and asking why and why and why. Not because I'm trying to get them to not believe, but when you start to question your faith, only one or two things are going to happen. You're going to find out, this doesn't work. I don't believe this. It's not as strong as I thought it was. Or, yeah, this does work for me. And now you're going to be even stronger and more secure in that faith. Only one or two things is going to happen. So the only reason you would tell somebody not to question things is if you're worried that things are not solid and going to fall apart. sounds like a you problem.
That is
Anyway,
That
hilarious.
that and a lot of times, to be quite honest, I learned this as I got older too. A lot of times you're literally asking people that don't know either. And I'm talking about some of these pastors too. Like some they don't want you asking because some of them I started to notice even as I got older when I was there, I could go in and over a couple months, if you go back in, you could find that pastor was probably still talking about the same thing he was talking about last month. There's
Right.
parts of the Bible they just never even go to.
yep,
Right.
So sometimes the studying isn't enough. They haven't analyzed some of this stuff either, other than putting it out. So you ask them questions that they don't want to deal with because they don't know.
yep,
And I'll tell you what, um, I'll be the one to say it. This happens within the Sikh month too. This happens within the Sikh faith too.
for
Like
sure.
that kind of behavior is starting to come over to us too. Where I know a lot of Punjabi Sikh youth. You know, they have questions about Sikhi, but the parents literally don't have the understanding of Sikhi to give that information to them, and so they just send their kids to Sikh camps and put it in somebody else's hands and say, "Here, you teach my kid the Sikh things." But that kind of stuff happens as well. It happens within all faith practices, but I think there's something about Sikhi that is like fundamentally different, that makes our experience fundamentally different, like on a theological level. Guru Nanak was
Yeah.
never the person to be like, oh, just I'm saying it, so believe it. Guru Nanak was the person that was like, but don't just believe what I'm saying. You go out and
Mm-hmm.
practice it, and then you tell me what happens.
Mm-hmm.
That was the
And
kind of guru that we follow.
yeah, and that I was gonna touch on another question, another comment, but this one here is kind of perfect. Deacon Fatal says, "Okay, so that is universal with all religions." I'm taking it. Yes and no. I would say that that is what I thought, which is why I was sort of giving up at one point because I was like, okay, so all our organized religions are the same, but I do think Sikhi is different.
Hmm.
You know,
I
not
agree.
to sound like I don't want to sound like I'm proselytizing here because that's one thing I do not like. I think proselytizing is just another side of colonization, but anyways, I don't think it's universal with all religions. I think it's universal with a lot of religions, a lot of
Hmm.
organized religions, whether that was the intention from the beginning or whether humans and people have made it that way. I don't know, but I know with Sikhi, no, it is a little bit different. Um, and then Deacon Fatal also said, this is the comment I was going to touch on. I think the generations after me will be okay because they want to learn everything, kind of, but they are making a start. I keep telling people now. I am somebody who I was an educator for a while. I was a tutor, a teacher's assistant, a teacher. So I have taught Gen Z. Um, and I keep trying to tell people if we survive this, it's gonna be because of Gen Z. Like
I
I
hate
think
how much they
millennials
shit on them.
have given them a great head start, but Gen Z is gonna be all right. If we're gonna be all right, it's gonna be because Gen Z saves us. Okay,
I
so while
hate how
people
much they
continue
crap
to
on
shit
them.
on, yeah, while people continue to shit on Gen Z, is Gen Z who has access to information at a younger age. They're really interested. They're not just one thing I've always hated is just listening to authority because it's authority. Who says you got the answers? How do I know that you have the truth? Who are you? I don't even know you. Like just because you are now this always got me in trouble, but you being the teacher does not mean that you're right. It just means that you're the teacher, right? And so Gen Z sort of has this overall like question authority, question everything we've been told, and I love that
Yep.
for Gen Z. They have information, they have access to information, they're learning, they're not here for a lot of the BS. Now that's not to say everybody, because people are still people, but in
But
general,
a lot of them.
overall, a lot of
If
Gen Z is gonna be all right.
Thanks
if I
so
could say
much
this
from
about them
someone who's on the
too,
cusp.
because I actually got to see this going through because I decided to go to the into the military or whatever a little bit older. And so I went in also being, of course, don't ask, don't tell, and all that ain't a thing no more. But I still went in. I've been doing I still tend to be kind of reserved in general with everything. Well, I tell you I got in because I'm coming in with a lot of what would be considered Gen Z when I went through training. And I was kind of to a certain degree myself, but I was shocked being from my generation and then watching these guys like legit. The person that decides to be an ignorant bigot is the one that nobody wants to deal with when you're among a bunch of Gen Zers. Like that's the not cool person. And they will say something to that person
Yep,
quickly.
yep, 100%.
They
I
will
completely
check
agree
them.
with that. They will, and I love that for them, and I will be there to back them up every time. Like I'm at the point where I'm the like, oh god, that's so loud. I'm gonna have to close my door. It's hot, but I'm gonna have to close my door in a second. But I'm the person like I'm the mid millennial who will because I'm a big fan of like if you're an ally, if you're an accomplice, you shouldn't be in the front. Like, I don't mind leading from the back or alongside. So I'm the person that's gonna be like alongside Gen Z or like over their shoulder, like, yeah, what they said, like, yeah, shut up, listen to them, like I'm gonna back them up every time. Because Gen Z, they've been teaching me some things. And as somebody who's like a self-identified certified nerd, and I know a lot about a lot, Gen Z been teaching me, and I really appreciate it. Let me
You're
see, there's some
welcome.
other comments.
And being a
Um,
learner and being oriented to curiosity is something
mhm,
that is so fundamental, actually, to the Sikh theology.
mhm,
Sorma was talking about Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and you were talking about leading a Bible study and asking questions, and
mhm,
that kind of brought to my mind, like right up in the front of Japji Sahib, Guru Nanak Dev Ji is saying, "Give Sachiara Hoya, give
Yeah.
Pure Tepal." That's like that's the first question in Sikhi. And our scriptures actually train us to ask questions. And just
mhm.
to do the translation for everyone who's here, it's like, give Satyara Hoy, how to live truthfully. How to give Kure to Tepal is how to break the veil of illusion. And so, being truthful and being oriented, it always kind of perplexed me growing up when people of other faiths were like, science is one thing and religion is another thing. And I was like, I didn't even have the words to be like, why can't religion also be about truth? And why can't religion be about testing a hypothesis? And why can't religion, these are, I guess the word religion has become so dirty, but if we
I think
maybe
religion
rebrand it
is
as like,
science.
why not think about it as wisdom traditions? Like, we are inheritors of this vast tradition of practices and observations and wisdoms that our ancestors have carried on down for us. And it does not mean that we need to be bound by it, but we can certainly benefit from it.
Absolutely.
And that is kind of, I think that orientation in more like Gen Z and millennial people, it resonates a lot more in terms of science and spirituality are not necessarily opposed to one another, and
Right.
we should live lives where we are asking questions, and that should be
Absolutely.
like central to our spiritual well-being.
Yeah, I don't think we should stop asking questions. I mean, what is the definition of a Sikh? I mean, you know what I mean. The other thing is, at my Black Catholic University, right? Um, this was really the first time I heard somebody say this, but there was a professor. I wasn't a science major, so I didn't have him, but like all of my friends were science majors. They were all pre-med. And so they all had this one professor, and he was like, first of all, he was so fine. But he was also a married man, a married gay man, okay? But he said something, and I can't remember his exact words, but I used to just be like enamored by everything he said. But one time he said something, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And he was like, for me as a science teacher and as a man of faith, those two things are not in conflict with one another. Those two things, they support each other. They make the other stronger, right? Like, my belief in one makes my belief in the other stronger, because really, like, if you look at science and like how wondrous it is, how intricate it is, like how, I mean, as somebody like with a chronic illness, when I really understand like the human body, like, and I understand the intricacies of science, like, you really want me to believe that just happened by chance? Like, it just randomly popped up one day. There's no okay. Anyways, we don't have to go that far, but I 100% agree. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. I don't think that they are in conflict with one another. I think if anything, they support the other. There was a question I had up here. It was, oh, here it is. Are the people, my bad, 1 second, Kimmy. So are the people that challenge you all generally older people? Now, I know what my answer is based on my lived experience, but also based on just running, just having launched the Black and Sick project platform since November. But I'm interested to hear
Yeah.
what y'all say. The people that challenge
Yeah.
you all, are they
Yeah.
generally older people? And
Yeah.
Tanya D, I don't know if you mean
Hmm.
like challenge in terms of like being Black and Sick specifically, or just I'm not sure if you can like add to that. But how I'm interpreting it, I know I have my answer. But anybody wanna tackle that? Wanna respond to that?
I'm gonna go first because it's right on the tip of my tongue.
Go for it.
Throughout my experience in Sikhi, a lot of my challenges have happened within people of, you'd be surprised, Gen Zers and people of my age group around, especially like within the AKJ and Luxali spaces and stuff, and then missionary spaces as well, missionaristic spaces as well. That's where I get a lot of my challenges from. But yes, we do get challenges from like the uncles and stuff. Like my most recent experiences at Gurdwara, when I was actually at Gurdwara in San Antonio, came from, you know, the boomers. Because majority of, if we want to be honest, people my age don't even go to the Gurdwara anymore. Like all of my friends were like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds because I was closer to them in age than I was the boomers that are at the Gurdwara, and the boomers always had a problem with me,
Mm.
and so it's kind of like a mixed audience for me because, you know, even though Gen Z feels different ways about things, you got to remember that it was the boomers who raised them, and so they still have, you know, some of that conflict, you know, or conflicting ways of thinking that you have to experience, especially when they get older. You know, I've seen, because I've been in Sikh 8 years now, so that's long enough to meet a kid at the Gurdwara and then watch the kid grow up and see how the kid changes. And like the kid is in college now, and the kid is way different to how they were when I met them in the first place. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, it comes from, you know, a mixed age variety for me.
Okay. And I'm actually going to Unique. If you're still there, I want to bring on Neek. They've been waiting for a minute. I wanted to make sure they were safe and not driving, but I think they've been on. So at some point, okay, looks like they're ready. So I'm gonna bring on Neek, and I'm gonna have them just introduce themselves, give a quick like just name, pronouns, just the basics, and then we're gonna get back to this question. If and whoever else wants to answer the question, go for it. I might take myself off the screen, but we'll see. Let me add Neek to the live. Yeah, this is wild. Let me
A
Oh, dang, my bad. I had myself on mute. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear
Okay,
you.
okay, hey, what's up? My name is Neek, or you can call me Juan. My pronouns or anything you want to call me. I didn't been called like everything, so it really doesn't matter to me. Um, and I've been a sick for like 4 years now, almost five. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I live in Cali right now because I'm in the military. And yeah,
Louisiana, baby.
you already know, baby, from
You
the
already know, babe.
505.
Sorry, I had to say something. My
I
daddy's side of
don't,
the family from
you
Louisiana, baby. We got
already
to rep
know.
all
You
day
already.
long. So I guess for you, Nick, how do you feel about the question that was asked? Like, where do you normally get your challenges from within like six spaces? Is it like the older people, or is it like the new cats?
I don't know. Like, I feel like so I go to the Gurdwara and like I don't know. I don't really talk to nobody. Nobody don't really talk to me. So I mean, I have some people come up to me say hey here and there, but generally I just go there. Nobody don't really talk to me because it's a lot of it's not a lot of like people my age there,
Mhm.
or like um young people. There's like a lot of like little kids just running around. So I feel like I don't really get to talk to people. I go there, praise God, and leave out.
Yeah.
yeah, I can y'all hear? Okay, yeah. All right. So I find it interesting. So I find that when it comes to Punjabi sex, it's younger people, often usually younger than me. It seems like who try to, I guess, challenge me, give me a hard time, question me or whatever. But there's never mind, I won't go there. I think it's younger people. But when it is here in like the US at the Gurdwara, like in person, it's like older people, and it's usually like goofy stuff. It's like I remember like one time, never mind, I'm not gonna, because that's a friend who did that. So anyways, I think it's younger people when it's like online and it's like Punjabi sex online is younger people. In fact, it's usually older people who are very welcoming, who are like, hey, don't trip. Now, I will say this: older people. Now, when I say older, I mean anybody older than me. So like 30s and up. I just mean like, I don't mean like 70, 80. I just mean older. Um, Millennials and up, I will say that. Um, and I think that a lot of them mean well, but they still say stuff that kind of lets me know like you got some things you could learn too. You could do a little bit better too. Whether it's the language that they're using or I've been hearing a lot, which has really kind of surprised me, but not. But I've been hearing a lot of like, ignore that, ignore them, ignore this, and I'm like, that's not even what Sikhi teaches. Like Sikhi doesn't even teach that we should be ignoring somebody's harm or hurt or you know what I mean? Like that's one of the reasons I left Christianity, because this whole idea of like, just pray about it, just pray about it, you'll be okay, let God handle it, just pray about it. And I'm like, no. Like, while I believe that, like, yes, you should pray, you should ask God and all that stuff, like, no, like we need action, right? And so I think that's been pretty interesting. So I would
And
say
then
like
they try
older
to use
people.
Bonnie to enforce it. They try to use the Guru Nanak said, "Don't argue with fools" and all that type of stuff. I'm just
I,
like,
I haven't had that pushback. Usually, if I say something, they just either don't respond, excuse me, they don't respond, or they'll be like, "You're right. I was just thinking, like, And again, this is why I say they mean well. But I'm like, I kind of use the example one time where I was like, if somebody was like flicking you in your face, like if somebody just came up to you and just like popped you in your face, right? Like, would you just ignore it? Like, would you just, and then somebody just kept doing it over and over and over and over? You would just keep ignoring it? I don't, it's like, I don't,
eventually I'm gonna punch you.
right, like I don't understand like what you want, because somebody's only going to ignore it for so long, right? But then if we do clap back, or if we do slap somebody or punch them in their face, or like grab their hand and be like, why are you flicking me in my face, then we're the what I've been called, what, angry,
Aggressive.
aggressive, whatever else. Now mind you, it seems like neurospicy people are like magnets to each other. So as somebody who is neurospicy, like my communication tends to just be pretty direct, cut and dry. Like I mean what I say what I mean. Like there's no subtext. Like you don't have to like interpret what I'm saying, right? But with that, if I'm not like sugarcoating it, if I'm not like, couching it in like LOLs and smiley faces and haha, thank you, but I'm so like, could you maybe not be mean to me? And like, it's like, yo, you out of pocket. Then it's like, oh my God, why are you so mad? This was just a joke. Calm down. It's like, all right, bro. I'm gonna be done on that one. So I would say it's younger people, but I would also say that the younger people come with more ridiculous like clapbacks. It sounds like they're regurgitating things that they've heard, like they don't even
Right.
really fully understand what they're saying, because they can't ever really continue the conversation. They can't really continue the argument. Like they say something, they make an argument, then you say something in response, and they just like, well, I'm stuck. I didn't expect that response. Nobody told me what to say after that, so I don't know what to tell you. And they kind of just tap out or like double down and say the same thing, and then you just know, never mind, bye. But I don't know. What about you? What's your experience with? I don't know what you are in terms of. I don't know if you want to give your age or like millennial, what generation you are. But what's your experience in terms of like either folks pushing back or maybe challenging you, or do you have that experience?
Sure. So I am an older millennial. I'm like an elder millennial. I'm like the ancient person in this conversation. Um, and uh, you know, we just heard about, when I go to Gurdwara, uh, nobody asks me anything. No one else is my age, and I don't talk to anyone. I was like, damn, that sounds like amazing. I wish every time I went to Gurdwara was like that.
So wait, would you
No,
consider
Leave
you
me
yourself
alone and let me
don't.
be in my
It,
peace.
would you consider
Um,
yourself like uncle status now?
no, oh dear God, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on the uncle status either. The Gurdwara I go to, I wouldn't say it's super diverse. It's like, the one here in Albuquerque is like majority Punjabi, but there are people of all races who show up. So, I've seen Black people and Asian people and white people, and I've even seen like groups of like college kids or high school students who are clearly like doing it for some sort of like classroom project kind of a deal.
Right.
So uh, for that, whatever. But when I go to Gurdwara, like I want to be left alone. I want to have my peace. And so that kind of actually just sounds like amazing to me. But I guess, but I'm not trying to belittle the point of like, we should all feel inclusion, and we should all feel that Gurdwara is a space where we can show up in the fullness of ourselves and be respected, and have like our dignity maintained, and have time to commune with the Sangat and also with the Guru. But that's in an ideal world, I think. Now, I purposely didn't answer this question because, Smalls, just like you, the subtext of it was, when you are questioned about being Sikh and being Black. And that's not my experience, right? I'm born in a Punjabi family. So I was kind of, when I read that question and you had that subtext, and I kind of also got that same vibe from it, I just wanted to sit back and hear what other people's experiences were, because I didn't really think that it applied to me.
Yeah, that's understandable. And I think it's interesting because as an introvert, there are times where I want to be left alone. I would like to just go to the Gurdwara and do what I'm going to do at the Gurdwara, right? And I find it interesting because now I almost welcome, whereas like kind of in the beginning when people would come up to me and make assumptions that I was like brand new and didn't know what I was doing, and they wanted to like show me around and explain things to me, despite the fact that I have on a turban and gada and like, where at first I was like, like I don't need this, I'm trying to be nice and kind or whatever. Now, because for me the alternative experience is being completely ignored and just stared at or followed around because they think I'm stealing. Like I haven't had an in between. Like I've only had one experience where somebody came to me and was like, "Hey, how are you? Tell me about yourself. What's your experience with Sikhi? Like, are you new?" Right? I've only had that one time, and that was in the middle of, I don't know, it was Vegas. I was somewhere with my mom on like a business trip or whatever, and I wanted to stop because there was a Gurdwara nearby, and I wanted to stop. And that's the only time I've had the experience. Every other experience has been assuming I know nothing and kind of like this is my very first time at the Gurdwara, or assuming I'm there to steal and like or staring at me and like avoiding me at all costs. And so now I'm like, I would rather have the first one, even though sometimes it's annoying. I now welcome that as opposed to like you treating me like a villain, like there to steal. So.
Sure. Actually, you raise a really interesting point and a distinction in terms of like, a while back, you also mentioned like your home Gurdwara. So like the Sangat that knows you, I would hope at least that by this point that like they know you. When you go there, you feel relaxed, you feel part of the community. Like
for sure.
Whatever experience you want that day, you can curate that experience, whether it is being talkative with people or having your introvert experience or whatever it is.
Right.
But just so you know, like as a Punjabi Sikh, if I'm like traveling somewhere and I go to Gurdwara, first of all, like I don't really make the effort, to be totally honest with you. Like it's either I'm going to a Gurdwara in a place that I've lived before where like, or that my family is. And so there is some sort of like connection there. But if I'm like traveling, I don't think I've ever like made that type of effort on my own. And if I did, the amount of annoying curiosity that there would be, I cannot begin to tell you, in terms of where are you from? What do you do? Are you married? Who are your parents? What is this? What is that? Like, get into your business in like all kinds of ways. And
I'm
so,
starting to get that now.
Yeah, and so
like,
and so in a new Sangat, can there be the auntie or uncle or anybody of any age who's going to be like just a little bit like give me my space? Absolutely. And now I also want to name that just because that is my experience, that's not I want to be really clear that there's a specificity to the Black American experience, and there's also a specificity to the Black experience in Sikhi. And so I don't want to minimize anything, but I do want to say that like the annoying curiosity is also there for me, and is just like, you kind of just give them as much grace as possible,
I think I think I would
keep it
welcome
moving,
annoying
and keep it
curiosity though.
and keep it moving is also the other thing. It's like if I'm not in the mood for it that day, like
Right.
just keep
Yeah,
it moving.
I think I would welcome annoying curiosity. I say that now as somebody who doesn't get it, right? But I think the annoying part for me is not the curiosity, it's the assumption that I don't know what I'm talking about or don't know what I'm doing, right? It's that part. Like I would like the person who was like, "Who are you? Where you're from? How'd you find out about Sikhi? Oh man, you converted? Whoa, tell me everything." It's like, and especially at the beginning, I think that was much more at the beginning of me converting of my journey with Sikhi. But yeah, it's not even the curious. And I do, don't get me wrong, because I do understand the question, because I think back to my experience with Christianity, right, and going to church on Sundays, and if something's happening, you're like, oh no, I got to deal with this, and you don't want to, you got to be mindful of how you respond, because your mom might give you a side of like straighten your face, like answer her, don't be disrespectful, right? You
Right.
answer, until you get to a certain age where you can be like, man, mind your business, So I do understand it. Like we have our version of that, right, in the Black community and in the Black Christian church. It's usually just the assumptions that I am
Yeah.
brand new that is mostly annoying. All right, so I'm gonna try to get through like a bunch of questions here, and then I'm gonna get to. I would love to compare this. I think is a great segue to compare some more of the Christian church, the Black church specifically, with the Gurdwara. Things like having shoes off, where I feel like if you walked into a Christian or a Black church without shoes on, you're gonna get some side eyes, you're gonna get some
Oh,
stares, you're gonna get some
absolutely.
questions. You're gonna have somebody walk up to you, like an usher walk up to you, like, "Sir, what are you doing?" You're like, "Are you homeless? What's happening?" Right? So little things like that.
I've done it before.
Yeah. So let
I've
me
done
get
it
through.
before.
Let me get through a few of these questions. If I let's see if I can, and if not, if they're gonna require a longer answer, then we will save them. So, question: what is the creation of the panel? Because I don't know anything about this religion. I think Deacon Fatal is talking about the Khalsa, I believe, and so that is something that's a little bit longer of an answer. So we will talk about that in a bit. I think if Deacon Fatal, if that's not what you're talking about, please let me know. Deacon Fatal says, "Listen, us Christians can't even keep up with the two commandments that mattered. Love your neighbor as yourself." Still wondering which God they were talking about on the second verse. Yeah. Here's what I would say, because I think it's easy as somebody who is like new to this religion to sort of like romanticize the religion, um and especially because I do think that Sikhi is better than Christianity, like fundamentally, like on paper. Of course I'm biased, but whatever. But also, people are people, humans are going to human, and it doesn't matter how perfect a religion or a faith practice is itself. Humans are not perfect, humans are imperfect, and so yeah, Christians have a hard time upholding the commandments, and Sikhs have a hard time upholding our commandments. They're not called commandments, but you know what I mean, like the instructions that we've been given. So it's a human thing, it's a people thing, not necessarily religion specific. Let's see. Deacon Fatal says, "I can't stop asking questions." Please don't stop asking questions. That's exactly what we're here for. Are any of y'all ever cautious to talk with anyone in this space? I'm not 100% sure what you mean. I don't know if you mean like in Sikh spaces, or I'm not 100% sure what you mean, Deeks. Let me know, and we'll get to that. Okay, so I respect the honesty. Yeah, for sure. I think it's a people thing. Um, Oh, the church is like, "Hey, can you stand up if you're a new member?" No, I don't want to. That is a perfect, to me, segue of the difference between the Black church and
Well,
going
that's
to
funny
a
because that
Gurdwara.
happened to me the
If
first time we went to the Gurdwara.
if
Like
if
they
you
made me and
are,
my friend stand up.
I've never ever experienced that. Now, I will say that as somebody who is an introvert, and the older I got, like the more defiant I got, I would go to a visiting church, and they would be like, "Any first timers here? If you could please stand," and people would be looking dead at me, and I would look dead back. "Any first timers, could you please stand?" No. No, I didn't ask to be called out like that. No, I cannot stand. And then somebody's nudging me, or the usher coming over tapping me. "Do you want to stand up?" I sure don't. I sure don't. I sure don't. That's not why I'm here. I sure don't. So no, I'm not gonna do that. But that is something that is very common with the Black church. Now Sorma said that happened the first time you went somewhere. I don't know if it's anybody else. I don't know if
Yeah.
Ray's ready or Neek is ready. Because I would love to hear y'all's take on that if that's ever happened with y'all. But I've never had anybody at a Gurdwara say that or do that. And I think if I did, I'm trying to think of how I'd respond. Um, just as somebody who's like not only an introvert but also like shy, I feel like I'd be like, "Hi, I'm Smalls by," and I would just leave or something. I don't really know because in person I'm like very. I don't know. I don't know. But y'all tell me. What do you?
I can just tell you at my home Gurdwara, the aunties are very into like if there is a visiting group of people, like the students who come in to do like world religions report or whatever, they're very much about like announcing it because they feel that that acknowledgement, at least culturally from their perspective, is a way of acknowledging the presence of that person. And I think
Okay.
that in like for me, being born and raised in America, I feel like very differently about that. I do not feel the same way. But I think it's meant more as a way of naming that person, acknowledging that person's presence, and not putting them on blast, but, to each their own.
Sorma, you wanna? You said that you've been. I don't know. I didn't know if you want to elaborate on that, or Ray, if you wanted to talk about if you've ever
At
experienced that.
first, when I thought about it, I was like, it's kind of nice to actually acknowledge the fact that I was there. But like, as I've learned and been near the community, for a long time, I started to rethink about it. I'm like, maybe they were like, look, a black person.
That wouldn't surprise me. Because
So I
I've never heard of that happening. But yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, so that didn't happen to me. I can actually say my first experience because I haven't been able to go often because I mentioned in the last stream that we did we have two here where I am in Colorado. One of them is 2 hours away, um, and then the other one that I went in and didn't. There's no real information to give me any information about their services or anything else like that. So I tried
Super
to show up one
disorganized.
day, and there was only one person there, and we definitely had a language issue. So he called someone on the phone who just told me come back at another time, and I was like, okay, bet. But anyway, my the experience that I had when I drove out to the one that's 2 hours away, that would be in Denver, was actually pretty good. I didn't have anyone that tried to bring too much attention to me, but there was a white lady there that was there, and she saw me, and I kind of feel like because she was the only one, she kind of tried to take to me immediately and be like, "Well, let me make sure that this guy's good." So she comes up to me, she starts talking to me, she starts introducing me to people. She introduced me to another gentleman there that I think she kind of wanted me to pair off with him a little bit so he could take me around and show me everything and whatnot. But other than that, I honestly had a pretty good first experience. It's just, and I would go back there honestly. Longgarter was awesome, but it's 2 hours away. I can't make that drive frequently.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. I get that. All right, so I wanted. There's some other things that we wanted to compare and contrast. Another one. So the first one that we mentioned was like the shoes. So for anybody who doesn't know, when you go to a Gurdwara, you will need to have your head covered, and then you take your shoes off. Right. Also, you sit on the floor for the most part, unless you are older, have a
Hmm.
disability, or something like that. Everybody sits on the floor. Like it's a matter of everybody being equal. There's no pulpits and like higher. There's none of that. Everybody's equal. On you sit on the floor. And for the most part,
People
I've
fighting
had to.
about that.
Yeah, and it's wild. I will say that I find that to be interesting because as somebody who is disabled, as somebody who is a wheelchair user, I went through a period where I had to use my wheelchair almost full time. For the most part, I'm not using it anymore. My hips are a lot better, but as somebody who has an invisible disability, going to the Gurdwara, and I might not be in my wheelchair, right? Like because I could even when I was using my wheelchair, I could go short distances, right? So if I park near the Gurdwara, I can walk in. I'm cool. But if they don't see any like physical markers, but I can't also get on the floor, and so I need to sit in a chair. Oh, the hell that raises because we're not approaching anything with curiosity or questions, especially because I'm black. So I must not know what I'm doing, and so I must be sitting in a chair because I'm being defiant or something like that. It has not gone well. But ableism is not something I'm unfamiliar with. So that's that. But for the most part, you sit on the floor, unless you can't, and you have your shoes off. Now, like I said, if you walk into a black church with no shoes on, that's going to be an interesting experience. I've never tried it unless you're like doing like the liturgy, the liturgical dances, or like the whatever, and you got the little white
Oh,
dress
praise
on, and you
dancing.
like, yeah, like the praise dance. They call it different things, right? But unless you're doing that, unless you're part of that, then you should have shoes on. Okay,
Yeah.
you should have shoes on. Now you might also see a lot of people with hats, very large hats,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
or you might go to a
Yes.
Kojic or a Pentecostal, and they might have the little doilies on their head, right? Like,
Convention. Oh my
so
god, especially at the
they
Holy
have the head
Convocation and
covers,
stuff.
but they're very different. And I think the head covering is for a different reason. I don't really know because we didn't have that. Like I said, I was California Baptist, so we didn't have that. But that is definitely a very distinct difference. Um, also,
We
you
have
can
Sunday fashion
wear.
shows.
Oh, you
We
mean like
do.
okay?
We have
I
Sunday
I
fashion
thought you meant
shows. Let's be real.
yeah, okay, yeah, for sure, for sure. I remember I went to a,
Especially when they call for offering it and you got to make the loop around the church, and then when you put the thing in the basket and you turn and
oh
walk
yeah,
down
we
and
don't
sit
have
around,
that.
it's your time to sashay.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We didn't have that. We had the you either passed the collection plate around or you did get up,
Yeah.
but like again because it was California Baptist, it was like our church was so chill. Like I could wear what I'm wearing now to church. Like I'm wearing a
Right.
t-shirt and like I have on jeans because I'm not somebody who can just dress from the top half up. I don't know if I'm gonna get dressed. I'll get all the way dressed. So what I'm wearing right now, I could wear to my church and nobody would bat an eye or look twice. Like it was just it's fine.
You
So I
know
didn't
what?
really
Same
have
thing
that whole
here.
like we didn't have like the in fact my godmom's mom when she passed she had like this huge collection of like church hats and she like donated them to a few people and I got one. And so then when my uncle, I think it was my uncle who passed away, I just wanted an excuse to wear them because where else am I going to wear a church hat, right? And so I was like, perfect. And so like I got dressed up and I like put an outfit together just to wear the church hat. And everybody was like, "What are you doing?" Right? But I was like, making use of this hat. Because other than that, I didn't really have an excuse. I could go to church like this and be just fine. Like we didn't have like
I'm
in
being
fact,
Kojic today.
our pastor would be in the pulpit, like especially on youth Sundays, our pastor would be in the pulpit dressed just like this, like, whatever. So um I guess that's a difference. But I would say like with the Gurdwara, like I've seen people dressed all kind of ways at the Gurdwara. There's
Mm.
not a specific, I've never seen like a specific way of dressing at the Gurdwara. You go like when they say come as you are, that's what they actually mean. They say that at
Mhm.
the black church, that's not what they mean. If a black church says come as you are, they're lying. Just want to say that.
I will say I've run into a problem with
Agreed.
shorts, but anything other than that, they're just like, oh, it's fine. And another thing, they don't, as someone who's not Punjabi, they don't expect, or at least from in my experience, they didn't expect me to show up in like a kurta or stuff like that. Like I would show up in like bana, like a chola and stuff, because that's something that's not cultural for me. That's something that's like that's concept and within Sikhi, the chola and the damala and stuff. But I would show up and stuff like that. But
I don't
like,
know.
I
Like, there's
mean,
gonna be some people who watching who don't know what you're saying.
so like a chola is basically the Sikh warrior attire. It's like a robe type thing, but it's kind of like it's not all the way down to the feet. It stops at just below the knees, and this is something that the Sikhs would traditionally wear, like when going into war. And the malla is the traditional Sikh turban, like the one that Guru Gobind Singh and all the gurus from like the sixth guru wore that style of Sikh turban. It's kind of looked at as the official Sikh turban that was given to us by the guru. And so I would show up wearing that, and people would think, "Oh, it's fine, he's Sikh." But I think people would be really shocked if I showed up to the Gurdwara wearing like a kurta and pajama and stuff like that, because I typically don't wear. I wear stuff that I would wear going to church. Like me, I was raised in the new generation of Kojic, so I don't know if you know, women wear pants now in Church of God in Christ. They do that
What?
now.
Not in
Yes,
the ones out here. They don't.
women wear pants in the Church of God in Christ now, and we wear tight pants and regular stuff that everybody else wore. So I didn't grow up with that experience of, oh, I gotta wear, oh, this girl gotta wear a skirt or this that. I didn't grow up with that experience in Kojic because, I mean, like, people are allowed to evolve, and I guess we've kind of evolved away from that, harsh stance on women gotta wear skirts and dresses and stuff. But yeah, I
Can,
I
just
think
wear
that's interesting
comfortable
because
Western
that's
style
because you're in
clothing.
the South, you're in Texas, where it's like deep, deep Christian, and like here in
Yeah, I'm
California,
in I'm in Texas.
they're very
Even
much
if you
still
go to
like
our
wearing skirts.
international,
You're not wearing pants. Definitely not wearing shorts. Women, yeah, it's very much still
can they
even if you
none of
go to
preach?
that.
our international holy
Can they preach
convocation
now?
in Tennessee, like you see leaders on stage who are women wearing pants now. So I guess that
Oh
we've kind
wow.
of gotten
They let
away from
leaders on
that.
stage now. I mean, they let women on stage now.
Because
Yeah, I
we
mean
ain't do that.
they've been
Right?
fairly
Like,
progressive with
that's not
women
happening.
the entirety of our history as much as like they still don't let women be bishops, but there are like certain
Mm.
positions like the International Music Department. Dr. Mattie Moss Clark, she was over that. It's always traditionally been a woman in that high position, and for the first time, we have our first male one now. I still keep up with church politics because I kind of like that kind of stuff, but so we've I mean over the years we've kind of gotten less strict and more like everybody else. Anyway.
Okay. So another thing that we've talked about that is different from the Gurdwara versus church, which I imagine this might be different for different Christian churches, but we talked about kids running around, kids just
Mm.
kind of free to do whatever. I'll never forget the first time I went to a Gurdwara and the kids was running around. I was so confused and so disturbed. I was like, y'all not gonna come get these kids? Whose child is this? Whose baby is this? Who is this child for? Like, why? What? It was like it was just wild to me because that would never happen. Like you see memes sometimes. I think I might have one. I'm gonna try to find it real quick. Of like they talk about, this is something that we talk about a lot, like in the black community online, where you see like the black mom making that face, like sit down, right? Like they don't say a word, but they look at you like it's because the child could just be making noise in the pew. The
Mm-hmm.
child could just be doing something in the pew, just sneeze too loud, and the mom is like, be quiet, sit down, right? Like that's very much like the culture of most black churches, right? It might be
You better
different these
not even
days. I don't
fall
know.
asleep. You
It
better
Don't
sure
not
fall
better
fall
not.
asleep.
asleep.
It's either like if you're a certain age, you're allowed to go to sleep, right? Especially you go to sleep instead of cry, right? But if after a certain age, no, you don't get to go to sleep. You sit up straight, you look like you're paying attention. I don't care if you count your ABCs. You look like you're paying attention. Running
Hmm.
around out of the pew, disturbing other people, that's not a
If
thing that's happening.
You
if you
might
That's
ain't
just
get
got the
not a
Holy
snatched
thing.
up by
Ghost, sit
one of the
down.
other church mothers.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
And the thing is, if a child is running around and their parent hasn't come to collect them, another elder is going to come collect that child, and now the child and the child's parents are in trouble because what are you
Yep.
doing?
Yep.
What are you doing? Yes, I
Counting
said
your
counting your
ABCs.
ABCs. I said counting your ABCs because it don't really matter what you're doing. You just gotta look like you're paying attention. You know, the church pinch. Absolutely. Now I didn't get church pinch. My parents were not abusive, thank God. Like I didn't suffer no physical or no type of abuse like that. But yeah, no, you're not. If
I,
an elder, see, that was the thing. I think that's why parents are so
I got
like.
my ear
And
pulled.
again, this goes into like respectability politics and stuff, but this is why a lot of this, as funny as it is, right? A lot of this has to do with teaching black children how to behave in public spaces, right? Even in spaces where it's like safer, you have to teach your child how to behave because black children don't get to behave and be as free as other children
Mm.
in the world. They're adultified a lot earlier, right? And so we don't really have that luxury of just, well, children are children and that's how children act. No, that doesn't really work. So yeah, if another elder has to come snatch up your child, now the child is in trouble, but the child's parents are also in trouble because what were you doing? Why is your child out here running around not acting right, being foolish, XYZ, this, that, and the third? And I'm not even sure that they really understand, the politics behind it, the respectability politics, but it is what it is. Like you're not going to be running around. A church is just not a place where kids play and run around. Now, you might have children's church, you might have
Yeah.
children's Sunday school or Bible study, but if you are in the sanctuary with all the other adults, then you need to actually behave like an adult. That is what is
Yeah.
expected of black children. And again, I understand why it is. I understand why it's a thing. I understand that it goes back to respectability politics and keeping kids safe out in the world, black
It's-
children safe out in the world. But
If you not shouting
that's different
and
in
you're
the
not
Gurdwara.
praising the Lord, sit your ass down because
Right.
that's the only reason you should be running around the church is if you feel the Holy Ghost. Other than
100%.
that, sit down.
100%. Can y'all think of any other now? Sorma, you mentioned, I don't know if you want to touch on this. If you don't, we can just move on to another example. But you mentioned that one time you were in the Gurdwara and you had some random child come sit in your lap.
Oh yeah.
Now, that was another time when Sorma said that, I was like, what life are you living? Like, what is happening that you have random Punjabi children coming to sit in your black ass lap? What is happening right now? I anyways, if you want to talk on that, because that still floors me.
Point number one: people are not born with that type of prejudice. Seeing that child just felt comfortable
Absolutely.
sitting in my lap, I'm the blackest person in
Wait,
the
can I just say there is a statistic? I wish I would have known we were going to talk about this because I would have pulled up the statistic. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. There's a statistic that actually says that children are more likely, of all the adults in the world, they are more likely to find a black man when they are in trouble, when they are in danger, when they feel unsafe, than any other person of any other demographic. That is a research study. That is not my thing. Now, do I understand why that is? Does it make sense to me? Yes, because I understand white supremacy and politics and black people and all the other good stuff. But I just want to say, when Sorma's saying children are not born with that prejudice, not only is that true, but there's also research out there that speaks to the fact that children are more likely to find a black person, especially a black man, if they feel in danger, if they are in danger or whatever. Like they are sort of inherently comfortable with black men. But go for it.
I didn't even know that. But yeah, this kid was just, just playing around, and I guess they just felt like, hey, I want to go sit down, but I don't want to go sit down with this. Let me go sit down with this guy. And me, I like kids. I don't have a problem with it. I see all the kids, in the Sangat as family, because we're a month. So I just let the kid sit down, and he sat in my lap for like the majority of the divan before his mom realized, hey, where's my kid? And then the mom rushed over and grabbed him for me. I don't know if it was like, oh my God, he's sitting on that Kala's lap, or if it was, let me go get my kid, and because I don't want to bother people. I don't know what it was. I'm not making assumptions, but it's either of the two. But yeah, I mean, that's something that would probably, if you know the kid.
But think
in
about it though.
church
But think
and
think about the difference though for children who grow up in the Gurdwara and have the freedom to run around. Their parents feel so safe, feel that their children are so safe that it took a minute for her to realize, oh, where's my child? She wasn't even worried. She wasn't concerned. And I think like some people might see that as like, that's wild. Why weren't you worried about your children? Because they don't have the same concerns we have. You know what I'm saying? Like they
right.
don't have the same issues. Like she was in a Gurdwara. She was in a space that is safe for her. And she felt like her child was safe. I'm sure no adult is going to let them run out into the street, outside of the Gurdwara or whatever. So I
Oh,
just think I think that just really speaks to like the difference where like black parents, I think, and I'm saying this as somebody who has a godson who has been around kids. I have the same concerns and fears. I'm always constantly worried. Make sure that they are behaved. Make sure that they're well behaved. Make sure they aren't running off. Like I understand those concerns, and nobody had to like tell me to be concerned. The moment I got to a certain age and had children under my care, whether it was my nephews, niece, godson, wherever, I had those same concerns because I understood, even before I had language, to understand that not every space was safe for black children to just be themselves, to be free, to roam around. Like I couldn't let my guard down. Once we were outside of the house, we needed to be on guard. And the fact that she had that space to where she could just be cool and like, oh wait, where's my child? It's been a minute. Let me find this child. Right. I think that's like, to me, that's a beautiful thing, actually.
There is a lot that also goes on in our churches that for the most part I think that would prevent a lot that doesn't get talked about. I feel like that would
mm,
prevent that kind of comfortability anyway. For example, for me as a kid, I remember the church I went to for decades. My grandmother still did go to it until recently. um there was a couple different deacons here and there that took what my grandmother and mother felt like was a maybe a little bit of an a comfortable uncomfortable amount of interest in me.
mm.
Mm.
And we know that in our churches, and everyone kind of knows about it, but nobody says anything.
Mm.
And so knowing that you got this person who wants to go buy, dude wants to spend time with this little boy, wants to buy him all these things and stuff like that. Because we know these things, even though they're unspoken, you ain't finna go let your kids sit in nobody lap.
Right.
Yep. Yep. And that's something that I asked Sorma about. I said, because I know a lot of men have shared that, as much as they might love kids, they're always worried that like, how are they going to appear to other people, right? Like, how is it going to appear if there's a child in their presence or a child in their lap, especially a child who is of a different race if they are black? And so, yeah, I think that, and I just want to be clear, like this issue that we have with adults and having an affinity for children that is not wholesome. I'm gonna just say it like that. That is not something that is specific to any one culture or
Right.
religion.
No.
That is something that is worldwide, global. It's a major issue, and it's a much more common issue. Excuse me, it's a much more common issue than we really want to acknowledge or talk about, and us not talking about it is really a problem. That's
Right.
a whole other topic, but yeah, you're absolutely right, and I
I
think that
mean, it,
that would have been the case for me too. I don't know that my mom or parents would have allowed me to sit on the lap of a stranger or
right.
somebody that I did not know. um
I mean,
yeah,
I've had personal experiences with it because I go to Sikh youth camps, and one that I've faithfully gone to is Houston Sikh Youth Camp, and uh, um, or places like I know friends that go to different camps around the country, and I've been in situation where I get attached to one bisab. We kind of have like a camp bisab, and then it comes out that that bisab did something inappropriate with a child, and it's well documented. There's official legal records on it, and there's a letter from the adult saying that he did this, and he's due for this, and it's literally just all been swept under the rug. Like, you can
Wow.
literally Google this man's name, and all of these legal documents regarding this case comes up, and all of it has just been swept under the rug. And now I don't like calling out people mentioning names and stuff like that, because we've already, this came out a long time ago. We've already reconciled that. But I feel like, knowing that stuff like that happens, I do feel like within the Punjabi community, or within the Sangha that I've had experience with, the Houston area, um, people do need to start worrying about their children more, because I feel like there's too much. There's The trust element is too strong within the Sangha, and that's one thing that I like. Never in a million years would my mama or my auntie let me sit in anybody's lap other than my cousins, or somebody that the family knows really really well. There's that level of trust is not there at all, and I feel
for
like if there's
sure.
anything that, like, the Sikh communities where I'm from can learn, is please watch your children, because they don't be watching the kids. I
For
be outside
sure.
watching the kids. The kids be playing out all in the street. It's cars coming and stuff. I'm having to jerk other people's kids up so they can not get hit by cars. I'm just like, where you at? Like, come
Right.
on, parenting. But
So we have a question from Instagram, and I think this actually kind of really works into what we're talking about now, because we talk about when you go to Gurdwara, you take off your shoes, you make sure your hair, your head is covered, your hair, your kes is covered, and even though women can wear hats in church, men should not be. Right, like you should not have on like a cap. Now it's interesting because you can wear like a church hat, and I, as a woman, could get away with wearing this hat if my mom let me or whatever. But you're not supposed to be wearing, like, men aren't supposed to be wearing caps or like hats. Like, when the moment you step into the church doors, you take off your hat, right? Whereas with the Gurdwara, it's not like that. And so this question is from Arjun Singh. For those of you that keep your caste, how has that journey been? As a Punjabi Sikh, I found a lot of comfort in hearing about Black folk talk about their relationship with their hair. And man, first of all, let me just say, we got a whole episode planned for this, because is that serious? Is that big of a deal? It sounds like Arjun already has an idea of that. Already is kind of familiar with the fact that it is a big deal. Um, but does anybody specifically want to tackle that one? I mean, I got a lot to say, but anybody else about keeping your caste? Let me just the question one more time. For those of you that keep your caste, how has that journey been? As a Punjabi Sikh, I found a lot of comfort in hearing about Black folk talk about their relationship with their hair, and I think that this is can be answered whether you keep your caste or not, right? Like your journey with your hair,
mm,
because if you don't keep your caste, why? Or what's that experience or that journey has been like? Because I know that was a very, it still is a kind of an ongoing thing. It was a very tough one for me. So anybody wanna tackle that?
we're
I,
not
I
gonna all feel the same way about it,
I
Absolutely
can
not. I think we
because
we might all have we might have 4 or 5 different opinions, to be
right.
honest.
I
Me
can say.
personally, I'm
Oh, go
really,
ahead.
really attached to mine. So
Mhm.
I've been trying to look and find ways that I can upkeep, because Black people, we do have different hair textures. And even within the Black community, there are different hair textures, like numbers and letters. I'm a 4C, so I have like one of the thickest hair
Me
textures.
too.
We have to do different things to upkeep our hair. Some Black folks prefer to trim their hair to keep the split ends and all that type of stuff. Me personally, I'm so attached to my guests. Like, I have a phobia of scissors even coming close to my face or my head. So I would never. But I'm trying to. It's even a journey for me, because as a Black man, going to the barbershop is what we did. Like, we just went and cut it all off. So we don't, as black men, we really didn't even know how to upkeep our hair like that. Most of us don't know how to upkeep our hair. So it's still a journey for me, even 8 years in, learning, how does my hair respond to this? Or what things do I put in it? How can I use a protective style under my star? I'm trying to experiment. Do I get my hair braided under my star or cornrows or anything like that to try to upkeep my hair? But like, I've even had situations where I've gone to like a dodra samagam and I took my star off and I'm kind of draped my star over my head like a chuni, which is like a lot of Sikh men do that when it's time to take your star off. But I've had people comment saying, "Oh my God, look at your hair. Your hair's so matted. Your hair's matted and tangly like that because you didn't comb it and you don't comb it off." And I'm just like, "No, sir. This is how my hair grows naturally out of my head." And so I mean, yeah, I'm gonna shut up. But yeah, y'all go next.
So I don't know. So my experience is definitely pretty different because at about 26, that male pattern baldness started creeping in on me. So I mean, so I grow it a little bit on the sides and on the back. Um, and so that's not something I'm super attached to. But I also run into a different situation because, like I mentioned before in the past too, I'm also in the military. So as far as going and being able to observe that, or even the beard, because honestly I would, because I do have what's called PFB too, which where shaving a lot causes massive breakouts for me anyway. So that tied into my faith as well. It's like, ideally, yes, that would be something I would want to do, but there's a whole process that I have to go through that to even start on that. But I think what the other thing that becomes difficult to a certain degree for somebody coming from my background doing what I do is there is an expectation that they're going to have when you're presenting something saying, "Hey, I need an accommodation because this is my faith." They're not expecting to see that coming from a black face.
Right.
They're not taking that seriously necessarily. So when I have to actually go and be interviewed in order to request this and say that this is my faith, to a certain degree, they're also wondering, and I'm having to defend against the idea is he just doing this because he doesn't want to shave? Is he legitimate? And so for me, even before I did start, with my male pattern baldness and I did lose my hair up top, my hair was always really important to me too. I had locks before I started thinning. I actually had locks down to my shoulders, and I cut everything off once I realized it was getting a little too thin up there, and I wasn't going to keep trying to do all these styles trying to cover it up. But yeah, for me, yeah, my hair was always important to me because I felt like it was an expression of self. But even now, to be quite honest with you, a lot of the times, even with my sides and everything growing in, where some people feel like they have to hurry up and go shave their heads because it's growing back in. I don't feel that way. This is mine still, even with what's missing right here. This is still mine, and I'm comfortable with it because it's mine.
Neek. Can you hear us? Neek.
A little bit.
Okay, I can step in while if we're waiting for Neek to get on, but feel free to jump in and I'll mute myself if you want to come in. So I'm listening to this conversation from a very unique place myself, which is, yes, I'm a Punjabi Sikh. I'm also a board certified dermatologist. So when you talk about PFB, I treat a ton of people with PFB. When you talk about hair, it's very few people in the United States who are religiously mandated to grow their hair who also happen to be experts in hair, skin, and nails. And so I do a fair amount of community organizing with Sikh Coalition, and they have worked to get the accommodations for people. And at the end of every one of their emails, when they send out community messages, it's always, please practice your faith fearlessly. And if you are ever, Ray, I'm speaking to you like specifically, if you are ever inspired, or if you ever feel the spirit telling you that that's something that you want to do, there are so many resources for you and so many people who will go to bat for you and so many people who will believe you and just show up with their toolkit because they've done it for other people and they will do it for you also. And I can't tell you how many letters I have written for people in the military for PFB accommodation. It was just like so standard because I did my residency training in Brooklyn. So I did a lot of skin of color and I did a lot of like diverse hairstyles. I saw every single hairstyle you could imagine. Um, and, so just listening to this conversation, I feel like really engaged in it, but also really blessed to be able to show up because even though there isn't a large Sikh community here, I've had plenty of Sikh patients who have had hair issues one way or another and needed somebody to kind of um, translate what their skin was telling them, and particularly what their hair was telling them, and what is going on. They needed answers, and they wouldn't have necessarily felt comfortable, um, you know, unrolling their dari or their beard or taking off their turban in a medical office. But I just happened to be this kind of intersection of where that could happen. And so I share that just because I want to be a resource for all people. And I also shared the stuff about Sikh Coalition because even though I don't work for them, I and even when they started on, like, this was more than 10 years ago when they made this a priority about getting military accommodation, I was kind of like not 100% on board, and I was like, can somebody explain this to me, like why this is so important? And they said, the military is the largest employer in the United States, and if they are allowed to discriminate based on religious identity, then we have a problem of other private industries also making those claims as well. We need to make sure that religious accommodations that are feasible are made, and that we stand up and advocate for ourselves. And so I kind of had to sit and listen. And even though at the time it's not like, I think I was also feeling like I don't necessarily agree with everything that the military does, and I come from a tradition of needing, of by necessity being warriors and defending those who could not defend themselves. And I have that understanding, but I also understand that colonialism and imperial powers also use military force in ways that we need to challenge and interrogate. So there's like a lot going on and a lot to unpack there. But and that's a conversation for another time.
Right.
But there are people who will believe you, and there are people who have gone through the process and have won. In fact, there's a Marine that I was just reading about who got the accommodations in the Marines, and so I think it's now in every branch. I could be mistaken, but I've just heard of so many different cases in several different branches that it is something that is now on the military's radar screen and something that they have worked through already.
People like just fall.
And I feel like I'm in the Navy. I went through the whole process of submitting a waiver so I can be able to wear my star and stuff like that. And honestly, I felt like I should have never had to go through that. It shouldn't have never took what it took. It took like, I went to boot camp in June, and I didn't get my waiver back until November or October. It was like November, the end of September. But I felt like it should never took that long. It should have never took that long. So for me, it was a long process, and it was like, yeah, I want to wear my star today. Like, I want to wear my kata, like, but I couldn't do those things because they weren't allowed. And then and now, even now, like, I feel like I don't want to say discriminated, but I want to say I get kind of picked on a lot. Sometimes I'll not wear my this start one day at work, and they'll be like, "Oh, what happened to what happened to your turban, or they'll call it a hijab or whatever, and I have to correct them multiple times. They're like, yeah, like, and then they'll be like, oh, you're Muslim, and I'm just like, I told, like, I've been telling you guys and educating you guys a lot about my religion and about, me, and you're just being ignorant at this point. You keep on saying the same thing over and over again. Oh, like, what are you gonna be today? Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard. Like, they'll like even
That is
call
an
me
EO.
like,
That's an EO.
yeah, they'll even call me like, oh yeah, you're trying to be Indian, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a lot. It's a
You
lot
be ready
that
to
I
fight,
dealt
bro.
with in the military, and then, one day when I'm when I when my
Oh,
Uh oh.
oh, oh.
You back? We can't hear you.
We can't hear you. Let me just say real quick that the whole the whole the whole you're trying to be Indian thing is one of the reasons I call it whatever you want. I cling so hard to my own culture, right? Because one, I don't ever want to culturally appropriate, but two, no, I'm not. I'm not. I have no desire to be Indian or South Asian or anything other than black. I am proud to be black. I've always been proud to be black. And no, and I think that's going to come with more education, which I think it's tough because we don't proselytize and we don't evangelize and all that stuff. So there are a lot of misconceptions, especially here in the West, because
Good
are
Lord,
Americans.
Americans are
But
so dumb.
anyways, I the whole Nuv, our editor, like I said before, Nuv is our editor. Nuv is Punjabi, and he's got if you guys don't follow Nuv the poet, NAV the
I'll
poet.
follow.
If you don't follow Nuv, you need to follow Nuv. If because I want to be clear here at Black and Sikh, our goal is not to teach you about Sikhi. Of course there are going to be some things that we have to explain and teach and to really talk about our experience. That's understandable, but we're really not here to teach you about the fundamentals of Sikhi. There are a lot of platforms that are here for that. We're really here to speak about specifically the experience of being at this intersection, right? Of Black and Sikh, of culture and faith. And so it's tough, but there are a lot of misconceptions, and Nuv actually tackles this pretty well. And I'm also a fan of like not there's a quote that says speak only when like what you're going to say is more beautiful than the silence. And as an introvert, I really resonate with that quote, right? And so I'm not really a fan of if it's already been said, I don't need to say it, and so I'm just going to direct you to Nuv's platform because he does an amazing, excellent job of advocating for Sikhi and teaching and educating people, and he does it with a lot more patience than I have. But he talks about this, about the fact that like the reason we cover I'm just being honest, like the reason that we cover our hair is not a modesty thing, right? So there are times where you see him especially because of the things that people here in the West and U.S. folks are enamored with. They love to see him tie his turban. I think they feel like they're getting some sneak peek behind the scenes, like, oh my God, I saw his hair. I saw this Sikh's hair. It's like, yeah, you did. So what?
Right.
It's like, but
So
but the only understanding that they have of covering your hair for religious purposes is based on Islam and the whole modesty thing. But that's not why we cover our hair, right? And so it took me Nick, I'm gonna let you finish up in a second. It took me a lot of really drilling down to the root, to the trying to get to the point of why we cover our hair to really make decisions for myself. But we don't cover our hair out of modesty. It's not like you can't see my hair. Here go my hair right here. You can see it right here, right? You can see it. It's right there. It's not a modesty thing, right? So that's not why we do it. So when people say like, oh, you're trying to be Indian, or oh, I can see your hair, or like you're fake because you didn't wear it every single day, or it reminds me of like the first time I was in a wheelchair was in junior high school. So for those who are not here in the U.S., junior high is also like middle school. I find like I think a lot of like public school goes by middle school. I think, which I think middle school is like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like fifth through seventh grade maybe. Where junior high for like the private school system is sixth and seventh grade. And so I think I was in like seventh or eighth grade when I was first in a wheelchair for the first time. and it was like a 30-day thing. And mind you, me being in a wheelchair has to do with my hips, my chronic illness. Hips, having problems with their hips is a really common thing for people with my chronic illness, sickle cell. And so I was in a wheelchair because I was having problems. I was on crutches because one hip was bothering me, but then using the other hip was bothering. So my doctor, my hematologist was like, okay, let's try a wheelchair for 30 days. So I'm in this wheelchair, and of course it's one of the ugly giant wheelchairs, it's not like a custom wheelchair or whatever. So the kids immediately, because I'm still like moving my feet and my legs, they're like, oh, you're faking, I saw you move your feet. And it's like, nobody said I was paralyzed. Like, what are you
Stupid.
talking about, bro? Like, it reminds me of the same thing. Like, oh, I saw your hair. Oh, you didn't wear your turban today. I knew it. You were faking. It's like, what are you saying right now? Like, you sound goofy. You just sound goofy. But Nick, before I get into my experience with hair, I don't know if Nick, did you want to say something else? Did you want to wrap up before you cut out?
Um, yeah, I think it's hard being in the military and being a Sikh. It's really hard.
I
It's
believe
really
it.
hard. You kind of get almost bullied. I feel like kind of. It's just certain people, and then you'll have some people that be like, oh, you can't wear that because it's not a turban. Oh, it's not in your waiver. Because I wear a dupatta sometimes too, and or like I wear it by itself, or I'll wear it with my the star, and they're like, "Oh, is that a part of your turban? Like you can't wear that. That like it's not like she didn't like they didn't believe me until like I had to show them a picture. It was like, yeah, we wear this too. Like, like why does it matter? Like, why does me?
There's sadly
It
a little
goes.
less representation in your branch than mine, because I have seen I've actually seen a few now in my branch. And
Ray, you're in the army, right?
yeah, yeah.
Army, and then Nick, you're in the Navy. Okay.
I've seen a bit more representation in my branch than yours, and which is unfortunate, because across the board we should be finding other ways or better ways to make sure that we're properly educated. Because even my chaplain that I went to just first start working on my process, he definitely had never heard of or knew anything about it. But there's also something to be said for maybe we need a Sikh chaplain.
Yeah.
For
Well,
sure.
my chaplain. So they did this paper, and it was about like religions, like what religions that we don't have or whatever and stuff. And every time it's sick, it's never on there. So it also had the question if we would like to have like services and like be like a teacher to teach those services about whatever religion that you have. And I thought about it, and I was just like, no, I can't see myself. Nah, but I want to educate people though. But I don't want to do it. I want somebody else to come and do it.
Right, right,
Right.
right. That's honestly, that's how I felt about this project. I was like, hey, I got this idea, y'all. Somebody should do this. Somebody else. So you don't want to do it? You should do it. You should do it. Everybody was like, no, you should do it. I was like, no, I don't want. You should do it. So I get that. I feel that. I'm gonna just say real quick, that we could talk a whole episode about religious minorities versus religious privilege. I think Sorma mentioned this before. Oh, I don't know if it was on the last live stream or if it was on something we've recorded. I'm like drowning in content at this point, but I remember Sorma mentioned it, and I'm gonna just expound upon it. But like, here in the West, even though this is not officially a Christian nation, for all intents and purposes, it's a Christian nation, right? And
Mhm.
so, with Christians being the majority, there is Christian privilege, right? The fact that we celebrate Christian holidays, that they are federal holidays that we observe. Excuse me. That's a privilege. The fact that and I think a lot of Christians want to deny that. I've even said that to my mom, and she just is like, no, it's not. It's not a thing. But it very much is. If I go to my school and I say, oh, we got a Sikh holiday coming up, like our Guru's birthday is coming up.
We got a lot
So
of
what we doing? What we doing to celebrate that? Matter of fact, here go the whole calendar of Sikh holidays. Which ones are we celebrating? They're like, none. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. No. So that's just an example of privilege right there, and the fact that we're already a religious minority as Sikhs, that again was just another hesitation I had coming into Sikhi, where I was like, oh my God, you cannot be serious. Like, already a woman, a black woman, because one, me being black and a woman are not things that can be separated, because my experience as a black woman is different than Ray and Sorma's experience as black men. So those two things are inextricably linked, but that's already a marginalized identity. Then being disabled is a marginalized identity. I think really the main privilege that I had growing up was class privilege, right? Growing up middle class. But everything else was already like I was in a minority class, or marginalized group. And so Sikhi being just yet another one, even though it is the fourth or fifth largest religion, it's still considered a minority religion here in the West. And so, yeah, there's so much ignorance about it. And like, hopefully we can kind of get rid of some of that image, the more that ignorance, the more that we talk about it. But again, it's kind of tough when you don't proselytize, and I have no interest in proselytizing, so it's kind of tough. But I'll just say this: for me, um, that was, of all the things, I think tackling the hair and the turban thing, the keeping kes and covering, are probably the things that are the most difficult for me when it comes to Sikhi. And it's because of my connection to my hair. But different from Sorma, I have a connection, but it's not like I don't want to lose it. It's like it is such a fundamental part of who I am and my identity, that even if I have a mohawk, or if I'm bald, if I shave it off, like, that is part of who I am. That is part of my presentation, like it always has been, right? Um, I've been natural pretty much my whole life, and so for those who don't know, like, we've gone through periods as Black Americans, um, where we were like natural in the 70s in the Black and Proud movement, and then we kind of went back to the Jerry curls. And like, there's a lot of issues with colorism and texturism and featureism. If you don't know about those things, again, we can tackle them at a different time. But that was always an issue, because my hair is not that thick, right? So contrary to popular belief, not all Black people have the same texture of hair, right? I do not have 4C hair. I have like 3 something hair. I don't, it's a kind of a mix of things, but it's kind of like 3 something, right? I can only imagine that's probably some slave master DNA in there. I don't know. But I do know that as a result of my hair not being that thick, when I got a relaxer, the one time I did get a relaxer, and the only reason I got my hair relaxed was because I thought that's what you were supposed to do, because nobody around me had natural hair, right? So I just thought, well, I'm at that age, it's time to stop wearing knockers and little twisties, and now I have to grow up and get a relaxer. But my hair was just so like thin, like it wasn't. I started seeing other Black girls, and I saw like how like full their hair was with the relaxer and wearing it straight, and I was like, oh, that's what my hair is supposed to look like. That's what. Okay, I don't like this, and I went back to being natural, right? And I was natural at a time when nobody else had natural hair. And I'm saying that not because it makes me special, but because so that you can understand my experience. There were no natural hair products. There was nobody teaching you about natural hair. There was no YouTube tutorials about how to care for it. My mom had a relaxer pretty much her whole life. The only reason she even really understood my hair texture was because I had a very similar hair texture to my granny, right? And so she was like, okay, I recognize this, but I don't 100% know what to do with it, right? And so once I was at an age where like knockers and like the little balls and twisties were like too young for me, but I also wasn't doing the relaxed hair thing. I was kind of on my own, which meant I was going to school with my hair out. I was wearing hairstyles that now completely normal, twist outs or wash and go, completely normal. But I will never forget the first time I went to school with my hair out, just my curls just out or whatever, right? Now, mind you, I didn't have the right products, so by the end of the day, I probably did look a mess, okay? Because at that point it had dried and I didn't have the right products. But when I went there and people saw my hair texture, I will never forget, because thank God for therapy. But as somebody who was already grown up around predominantly white people and sort of had this issue with like my identity and struggled with, my identity as a Black person, hearing hearing another Black girl say, oh, are you mixed? Because I thought you was a regular nigga. Like, you, what is this? And like, they were
You got that good
clowning.
hair.
Right, like which was supposed to, I guess, in their eyes, be a compliment, but they're telling me that my hair texture now makes me less Black. I'm not regular Black. I'm not one of them, right? I'm somehow different because my hair texture is different, right? As though having, which for me, I'm like, I started to understand, oh, the only reason my hair is like this as somebody who is a descendant of slaves is probably not for a good reason, right? It's probably not for like some reason that I'm really happy about. So I understood that, but it's like they weren't making that connection, and they were telling me that I wasn't completely black, or like I was a different type of black, like I was a different species of black or something because of my hair texture. So now I'm starting to be like self-conscious in a way I was previously proud of my hair. And I was like, whatever. I've always been the like weird one, right? I've always been not the popular kid, but the one that everybody at least knew who I was, right? Either because I was the only black person or because I was one of the black people doing some wild shit, right? Skateboarding, coming to school wearing like Vans and DC shoe company shoes when
Alternative
nobody was
black.
wearing them, right? At like the alternative black, right? And luckily, like I said, luckily I had enough time in black spaces, um and therapy, that I'm not one of those people who's like, other black people hate me because I speak proper English. You're just mad because I like rock and roll and you don't. And you're like, that wasn't that no, that's not why. So I just want to let you know, any black people who think that that's the case, if you think other black people don't fuck with me, F with you, because you're somehow a special breed of black. That's not it. It's because you got some internalized anti-blackness you need to go deal with. Go get a therapist, okay? um Also, that goes to anybody who doesn't have any black friends. If you're black, get a therapist and then go find some black friends. That was my, so I've always had this very complicated relationship with my hair. And so to now be practicing this faith that tells me I need to cover my hair at all times, where I fought so hard to like be proud of my hair and to have it out, and to like not have somebody tell me that how my hair is and how I wear it makes me somehow different. That was tough, right? I wore the turban constantly for a while, and I just felt not like myself. I don't know, I can't fully explain it, but I just didn't feel like myself. And not too long after when I first started practicing Sikhi, I've had locks most of my life. I started having locks in 10th grade, but I've cut them a couple times and regrown them, cut them and regrown them for various reasons. And I had really long locks, like down to my waist, when I started first practicing Sikhi. And then I had to cut them at a certain point because, again, back to Sorma's point, the management and care of our hair is different. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so trimming your hair and maintaining it is a fundamental part of maintaining black hair. And so I always like try to tell people, I just don't think Guru Nanak had black hair or African hair in mind when he was making these turban mandates, when he was making these don't cut mandates, right? Maybe he did. I don't know. He traveled a lot. I don't know. But just based on everything I know, in my mind, I was like, I don't think he was thinking about my hair, because if I don't cut my hair, if I don't ever trim my ends, that's going to cause more damage to my hair. And while that might be fine for some people, it's not for me, right? And this goes back to black people not being a monolith, and like everybody's experience and thoughts on that being valid, right? And so I will never forget having this conversation with another black Sikh who was really, really struggling, because you go to a black hair salon and of course they're going to say you need to trim your ends. They're going to really advocate for you to trim your ends because that's healthy hair. That's how you maintain, the health of your hair. But if you're a part of a faith that says do not even take scissors anywhere near your hair, that is also understandable that you would now be conflicted. Like, well, what do I do? How do I make sure how do I make sure I can maintain the health of my hair, but also practice my faith the way that I want to? And so what I always recommend is that people have to make that decision for themselves, right? Like, you need to do what's right for you. And I always say that it goes back to the spirit and the essence of whatever the rule, the mandate, the instruction is. I've always been taught that Sikhi is teaching you not to just practice rules, rituals just for the sake of practicing them, right? I think we see that a lot in like Catholicism. And I really got to see this going to a Catholic high school and a Catholic university, where people were just kind of going through the motions. They were just saying the rosary. They were just doing these things just to be doing them. Excuse me. And I'll never forget somebody telling me that, like, she was going through a really tough time and she was doing all the things that she had been told she needed to do. She was practicing the rosary. She was reciting it over and over and over, and was feeling nothing. And she got so frustrated that she was like, forget it. And she just stopped and talked to God. And it wasn't until she did that and kind of let go of the rituals where she finally felt some peace and finally felt like she was connecting with God and having the relationship that she wanted. And I always use that example because to me, it really proves like what I believe, which is that like rules and rituals are supposed to be there as tools to guide us, to aid us. They can't get in the way of your faith practice. They can't get in the way of your relationship with God. And the moment that they do, it's time to stop and reassess, right? And so I look at the spirit of, why is Guru saying to keep your kes? Why is Guru saying to not cut your hair? Is it just for the sake of not cutting it? And when I start to talk to people who say, well, you can't cut your hair, you need to keep your kes, you need to wear a turban, and then I start to ask why. Now I know why. I understand it, right? Because this is probably the part of Sikhi that I've looked into the most. But when I go and I ask them, the people who are quick to police and tell you don't cut your hair and don't cut your beard and don't do this, and then you start to ask why, and they just go back to because Guru said it, because Sikhi said it, and then you say, okay, but why? Why was that? Why did Guru say that though? Like, why was that Guru's mandate? Why was that his command? Why is this a part of Sikhi? Well, because it is. If you can't tell me more than that, then we can't even have a conversation about this, right?
And they're
And
they're
so,
forgetting it. They're forgetting
Yeah.
that, if you don't mind, they're forgetting honestly that, like, the actual reasoning behind it, the reasoning behind it is also why I mentioned earlier my comfort with the fact that, yeah, I had some hair loss and whatever. You're supposed to be accepting you.
Mm.
And that's how I feel with even mine. It's like I could look at that at that point because I could have previously looked at it and been like, "Oh, I'm losing my hair. I'm embarrassed of this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need to cover it up. I need to." I don't feel the need to do any of that. I don't need to because I love what I have here. And
So,
that's why I make jokes about it myself.
yo,
yeah,
I'm gonna say this one quick thing because the library is closing. They're literally turning the lights off. Um, I actually, the way that I see it is that me personally, the reason why the whole guest thing drew me into Sikhi is because when I was being taught about how they treated us as slaves, one of the first things I was taught is that one of the first things they did with the slave was cut their hair. Because even connecting us back to our African roots, we were so expressive through our hair. You could tell someone who was a king by how he did his hair.
yes,
Um,
yes,
so
and so
I
much more
took
than that.
I took attraction to that because now I have a faith practice that's allowing me to express that part of me that was taken away from me for
Mm-hmm.
reasons of trying to control me and make me a slave. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm finna jet because they're
That's
kicking me out.
beautiful.
Even
That's
though it's
beautiful.
15 minutes till closing, but they kicked me out anyway. But anyway, yeah, it was nice talking to y'all. And hope y'all have a good rest of the conversation. But I'm gonna be
Me
out.
too.
For sure,
Alrighty.
for sure. Um, all right, so yeah,
That was
so
beautiful.
again, we have a whole like episode on black hair and Sikhi, because I think it is a whole topic unto itself. So I do appreciate the question. We're gonna wrap up here in just a second, actually. I just wanted to let me see if there's anything else we really want to tackle. So the really the last thing that we wanted to say, and I was actually hoping Sorma could speak to this, but maybe we'll have a separate discussion on this specifically because we do have episode 1 coming out. But one thing that Sorma mentioned in the clip, I don't know if y'all have seen it, was the inevitability of Black Gurdwaras, or because I'm sure even saying that has like freaked a lot of people out. Gurdwaras that are majority have a majority black Sangit or majority white Sangit. Those already exist. I just want to say that I think a lot of people do not know that. Not I think, I know a lot of people don't know that, because anytime we say it, people say they do not exist. Not only do they exist, I go to one where the Sangit is majority white. And so as Sikhi grows, because of this is the thing I don't think people understand, is that different places are different countries are different societies are different, and here in the US things are still pretty racially and culturally segregated. As much as people don't want to admit it, they are. I am in one of the most diverse states in the US. I am in California, not just California, but right now I'm in Southern California. It is one of the most diverse I mean, like, top 3, top 5, something like that. It was in like the top 2 at one point, but I think like Houston kind of, or a couple cities in Texas beat us out.
H
But
Town.
yeah, but it's one of the most diverse places. And even in one of the most diverse places, things are still segregated. I currently live in a neighborhood that is over 80% Latina. Over 80%. That means if I don't leave my area, because everything is pretty much here, stores, wherever, I don't really have to leave this area. If I don't leave my neighborhood, I can go months without seeing another black person. That is not an exaggeration. Months. Everything is in Spanish. My junk mail is in Spanish. The ads that I get are in Spanish. The
Wow.
missionaries that come through are in Spanish. I don't care if they're Mormon, Christian, whatever religion they come through, they're speaking Spanish. Some of them don't even speak English. They be like, hablo English. I mean, hablo español. No English, right? And that's okay. I mean, I knew that when I moved here, right? And that's fine. But because that is the case, it's inevitable that you're going to have Gurdwaras in spaces that are majority one particular culture or ethnicity. That's just like the inevitability. We didn't do that. We didn't design it that way. We didn't just get up one day and say we would like a Gurdwara that is mostly white. I'm telling you, I promise you, that's not something I would have ever suggested. Okay. There are times I have avoided going to my Gurdwara because I do know that it is mostly white. And after a black person gets killed, if I go there and y'all aren't even talking about it, or y'all are kikiing and giggling, I don't want to hear it. If I'm in my fields or whatever. So it's not something that we have done by design. It's just kind of the way that things work here in the U.S. And that's why, again, I always say it's better to ask questions and be curious than to be accusatory. So while Sorma's talking about majority white Sungits and majority black Sungits, at no point did he say this is what we want, this is how it should be, this is what we are demanding, this is what we are striving for. We are saying that this already exists in some form, and the inevitability of this continuing to happen is real. And so as a result, let's think about what is that going to look like. How are we going to merge these different cultures and ethnicities into Sikhi, right, in ways that of course are respectful and honoring the essence of Sikhi, and keeping Sikhi and the tenets of Sikhi true and at the forefront, right? So as we sort of wrap up here, I just want to know, does anybody have any? This is one thing I will say. When we talk about the inevitability of Black Gurdwaras, I think a good example is HBCUs. For those who don't know, historically Black college or university, right? I went to an HBCU. When we say historically Black college university, or more often than not, we just say Black colleges, that does not mean
Nope.
that does not mean that the college is only Black. It does not
Nope.
mean that it is excluding other people. In fact, when I went to my Black college years ago, 70 years ago or whatever, it was not all Black then. We had a huge East Asian population, a huge East Asian population. They were all in pharmacy school, but we had a huge East Asian population. They kept to themselves, but we had a huge East Asian population. And we had some white folks, and we had like a couple Latino folks. The reason that Black colleges exist is because there was a need for them, because we were not allowed to go to the other universities. We were not allowed to go to the predominantly white institutions, right? And so there was a need for Black colleges. Our university was created by a white nun, actually, right? It was made for Black kids and Black students to be able to get an education. So one, that is why they exist. Two, they do not exist to the exclusion of other cultures and ethnicities. It just means historically they are predominantly majority Black. Okay. And what does that mean? That means the experience at those universities is very different than the experience at a predominantly white university, right? Or college. It means that there are certain things that you can expect to experience at a Black college that you would not experience at other colleges, and that is okay, right? So I think that's a prime example of what we mean when we say majority Black Sungit, and how it being majority one culture or ethnicity is going to influence the way that Sikhi is practiced there. Not in any fundamental ways. It doesn't mean like we're trying to change the fundamentals of Sikhi. It just means that because of who you are, because of the culture, because especially when we talk about diversity and inclusion, when you're avoiding tokenizing people, you want to make sure that you consider the whole person. You want to bring all of that person to the table. And so when I come to the table, I come with all of my history, with all of my culture, with all of who I am, my traditions, my customs. I'm not leaving that at the door when I enter the Gurdwara, right? That comes with me wherever I go. And so that is going to impact the way that I practice Sikhi. Just like the turban that I choose to wear, I chose that turban because it has all of my favorite colors in it, but also because it had this sort of like African vibe to it. That was intentional. That goes back to sort of me combating the whole like, no, I'm not trying to be Indian, because I knew that was going to happen. I kind of foresaw somebody trying to accuse me of trying to be Indian, and often when I would wear my turban, I would make sure I wore the earrings that were like the shape of the African continent. Like I want you to know I'm still proud to be Black. I'm still proud to be who I am. I just happen to be practicing this faith that is also an ethno religion, right? And so I wanted to get in there, because when we talk about HBCUs and predominantly Black spaces, or predominantly any space, some people say, okay, well, we don't have a need for HBCUs anymore. We don't need them anymore. Now you guys can get into any college or university you want. So, which is a lie. But so we don't need HBCUs anymore. And I would argue otherwise. I would say that my experience, my 4 years at that HBCU, gave me a 4-year break that I was so desperate for. Right, a chance to be in a space with other Black people and Black teachers who didn't second guess me, who didn't have lower expectations for me just because I was black, who didn't make certain assumptions, who were not inherently unapologetically racist or anti-black, right? It gave me this break from the sort of real world that I very much needed. It allowed me to learn in an environment that felt safer, right? Because there is safety in numbers and there's also safety in that privilege, right? Or there's safety in numbers, and then with numbers and majority comes a certain privilege, right? And so as human beings, we tend to gravitate towards things that are similar and the same, right? And I want to play this last thing, and then I want to get your guys' like closing take on this. It is called it's a book that I found a long time ago. It's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And it's by Beverly Daniel Tatum. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Does anybody have any, as I like try to pull this up, does anybody have any like thoughts on any things I just said?
I do.
Go
Um,
for it.
I would say that I think one of the things that a lot of people miss as well is these things still exist and there's still a place for them because of the necessity, because we're still forgetting that there's still a need for certain things culturally that we just aren't understood or can't receive in a lot of these other spaces. There is no interest in some of these other spaces at meeting the needs that are specific to this particular demographic. So for that reason, it makes sense to have those. Not only that, but I'd also touch on the comments sometimes about wondering, are you trying to be Indian? Are you trying to be anything else? It's like you're not considering the fact that incorporating it in, as was likely intended for Sikhi anyway. Yes, should your everything be should your culture be absolutely everything to you? Not necessarily, but we do bring it along, and it should be understand, like I said in the previous one that we had, because it is the same to a certain degree. I feel like if you are Punjabi, you do have a culture. The people that are talking about wanting to maintain, you should trust me. Again, like I said in the last one that we saw, the last recording that we did, um, as a Black American, we definitely know what it's like to have culture lost. So I completely understand and support. Yes, these are culture things. So allow a person to step in and still be able to figure out how to navigate for themselves the merger between their faith and their religion, because you've already done that. Because there are some that completely forget that some of the things that you're practicing right now, even though you've been practicing it since you were little, some of those things you think are Sikhi and they're not. They are culture.
Absolutely 100%. So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna play this video real quick. I don't think I'm gonna play all of it. It's 14 minutes. Definitely not gonna play all of it. I'm gonna play a little bit of it, just to get a few key points, and then try to answer these last few questions, and we're gonna get out of here. So let me see. I'm actually gonna play it at 1.25. Let me know when y'all can see. Oh, there we go. Can y'all hear it?
No.
Nope.
Can't hear it?
Nope. Nope.
Okay, that I don't know how to fix, so that might not work. I might just share the link with y'all so y'all can check it out. Um,
Okay.
I was about to say
okay.
I read the
Yeah,
subtitles.
I'm gonna just share the link with y'all. I'm actually put the link in the chat right quick. But this is a really good it's a really good she talks about why, because I'm sure most black people, if not all black people, especially when you are in non-black spaces, can relate to this. If you go anywhere and you are one of only a few or one of a handful, you see another black person and you be like, I see you, sis, I see you,
Head
bro,
head
and you
nod.
just immediately If you head nod and if you can, you end up sitting. If there's a bunch of tables you can sit, and then you see the one with like one black person, you'd be like, all right, I'm gonna slide over here. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the black person who kind of is like, why are you trying to sit by me? Why? I don't understand. And they don't give you the head nod back. You don't trust them. Anyways, um,
True.
so I'm gonna put this in the actually, Kimmy, if you can, it's also in the episode. If you can drop that in the chat for me, that'd be great. And let me just see if we can go through some questions right quick. And y'all feel free to answer any and all, jump in. I'm gonna run through them, but just interrupt me if you got something to say. If you want to add
Just
to it.
while you're going in through that,
Yeah.
I'm going to say on the book. I think the first edition of the book was published in 1997, and then
Mm-hmm.
like there was a second
She's got a
edition
new.
that was done. The new one was 2017, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's still relevant, which
Very
means
much
that we
so.
still have a lot of work to do
Yeah,
Hmm.
very much so.
collectively. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I'm trying to unpresent. Okay, stop screen share before I end up showing y'all something y'all need to see. No, I'm just playing. I don't have nothing on the screen. I mean, on my computer. All right, so uh, okay, so are any of y'all ever cautious to talk with anyone in the space? Yes, in six spaces. Um, am I ever cautious? I don't think so. I mean, I'm sort of somebody, especially in person, if I don't know the people, like I said, I'm actually pretty shy. A lot of people don't believe that. I don't know why. I think because people don't understand introversion, but introversion and shyness are two different things. I just happen to be both. And that doesn't mean I don't like people. I like socializing. I like, performing is my passion, so that's not an issue. But because I am shy, until I get to know somebody, once I do get to know somebody, then good luck giving me to stop talking. But before then, I usually am not talking. I'm usually the one that's observing and just kind of sitting back and, understanding everybody. I don't know. What about y'all? Are y'all ever hesitant when
Wait.
y'all are in six spaces to speak up or to join in or talk
So
to
when I
people?
so when I go out there to meet you, you gonna be shy?
Me?
Cause I'm only an hour away, so it
Nah,
ain't
nigga, I
nothing
know
like
you. What do you? We already know each other. No,
But
get
we
out of
ain't
here.
never met in person
But
though,
it
so
don't
it's
matter.
That's
It
like
don't
different.
matter. It don't matter. Because here's my thing. A lot of people be like, online versus real life. Online is real life, right? Like the
Pretty
internet,
much.
everything that we interact with. I have friends that I've been friends with for 15, plus years. Wait, yeah, 15 plus years who I've never met in person. I still consider them friends. Like they know some of
Yep.
my deepest, darkest moments. They've been there for me at times when I was really struggling and vice versa. I mean, people who I've, sent money to, been like, you
Yep.
struggling, but you need a winter coat right now. I got you. Like, I'm gonna look out. Like, those are still friends. They're not like
Yep.
any less friends or any less real because we've never met in person, right? That's the
Yep.
beauty of the internet. And it's
Yep.
also, to consider online spaces not real or not legit is actually pretty ableist because there are a lot of people in the disabled community who that's really their only community. That's the only time they really get to interact with people for one reason or another. A lot of time it has to do with accessibility or the lack thereof. So, nah, we know each other. We already got a relationship. You got my phone number, bruh. Like, nah,
To the
that ain't nah.
point you just made too, even though I don't necessarily it's not ability or anything else like that for me, but that even rolls into my connection currently with any sort of sangat or anything else like that. Like right now, I don't have that, but I have a crap ton of friends that I've made now since I've been online.
Absolutely.
So many people that have reached out to me on multiple platforms. I learned
Yeah.
so much. I can ask questions. I've had people give me their direct numbers if I have any questions or anything else
Yeah.
I need to know. And so to me, when people are like, "Oh, do you currently have a sangha?" I do. I believe
Yeah.
I do. It's online,
Yeah.
but I do.
Yeah, I said that during the Cat Black interview because initially I misspoke because I said I was like, well, I still haven't really found the sungit that I was looking for, and I was like, no, that's not true. I have. It's just that they're online. Like we don't get to go hang out on the weekends and go here and go there, and I might not see them at the Gurdwara, but I do have a sungit. I do have people I can go to. I have people that I'm in community with. I absolutely have a sungit, and it just happens to be online. And I hesitate to use the word virtual. I would just say it's online. So I like to use like online versus offline instead of like online versus in real life. Um,
Mhm.
Indukor says, unfortunately, that is the older generations. Do we agree on that? I feel like we need a new Gurdwara run by just younger generations. I would wholeheartedly disagree. And the reason for that is because all of the people that I've gotten pushback from uh, all of the like most vile comments, all of the most racist comments, the gorilla emojis, the N-word drops, the
Yep.
homophobic slurs,
Yep.
the policing my Sikhi and how I practice it, the assumptions about me, the calling me angry and using other comments and accusations that are very
Microaggressions.
steeped in misogynoir and other microaggressions, they have all come from younger Sikhs. Somebody else said that to me. I think it was a Sikh from Australia who was, I believe they said 16, they're 16, and they had that same assumption. I think a lot of people have that assumption, like it's the older generations, they're the problem. When they die off, everything is going to be okay. And I think a lot of people are sort of banking on that, like, well, once the older generations die off, then things will be okay. No, absolutely not. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, one, my granny is in her 80s, and she was one of the first people to get the pronouns of my niece correct once she came out. Once my niece started identifying she, her, my granny was one of the first ones to like not only change the pronouns but even cuss out her friends who was trying, my niece and other people. Like, she didn't always have the correct language, right? She might have dropped the F-bomb a couple times because she didn't understand, hey, that's a slur, we don't use that. But she was defending my niece. She was like, hey, they can't help that shit. Don't be talking about her like that. You don't know. You sounded like, I mean, like full on cussing them out. And I remember sitting there. Sorry about that. I remember sitting there on the couch, like not paying attention. And I just hear her going off on this man, cussing him out. And I'm just like giddy and I'm so excited because I'm like, look at this 80-year-old, right? And if she can do it, if she can get her shit together, y'all can too. So no, I don't think it's a generational thing. I think maybe it's a little bit of a culture thing, but I think it's a lot of an ignorance thing and a lot of a white supremacy thing. So I
I'm gonna
I
call
actually,
a thing too. I'm
yeah,
gonna call a thing too, and say that if we're gonna be honest too, it also is generally. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I have never had any of those experiences from a young female. It's never been a young
oh,
woman.
I have.
You have?
I have. I
It's it's
have. I
been it's
have.
been nothing
I
but young
have.
men for
I
me.
have so many
It's been nothing but young
screenshots, and
men
I've
for me.
been I've been relatively surprised, but I collect all the screenshots. Every time you guys send me slurs or anything ridiculous or wild, even if I delete them and I block you, I make sure I get a screenshot first. And yes, there's so many women and so many females who do it. So
Wow.
I have found that it has not been based on gender, it has not been based on age, it has been based on, they're all Punjabi. I'll just say that.
Wow. That
Yeah.
surprised me. Yeah, it's been mostly young men for me
I
that
didn't
have
experience
done that
that
with to
until we
me.
launched Black and Sick. But oh, when we launched Black and Sick, the women, the girls, they came out the woodworks
Because the
heavy.
reason that the reason I thought it was too when I said initially me thinking it was young boys, because unfortunately what happens a lot of times, I know because I remember I was a young dumb boy where we like to get in places and stuff like that, and a lot of times when you get a little bit older and you want to test out being mean and shit like that, online is a space where a lot of little boys like to do that kind of thing, going online just saying things, want to hop on
here's
that. It's
here's why I'm not surprised. Because it's the same assumption that people have about women, white women, where they think that, back in the KKK days, the worst ones were the men, right? It was the men that were. It wasn't. I stand on this, that white women are the most dangerous demographic in
oh,
our
agreed,
society. And I think
agreed.
it's because people assume this virtuousness, they assume this innocence about white womanhood or whatever. And so as a result, they can be more insidious. Like their beliefs and their, like, who they are. I mean, there are photos on evidence of the white women and women doing like the most harmful stuff, being front row for lynchings and, things of that nature. Like, what do they say? Behind every like great man is a woman or a strong woman or something like that. Well, behind every racist, horrible heathen of a racist man is a woman clapping him on and supporting him. No, I don't think it's a gender thing at all. I think there's an assumption that there's just more like this virtuousness or innocence when it comes to like women, but I don't think that's the case at all. That brings up a very Deacon Fatal says that brings up a very good question that I ask now. Why don't many places of worship have understanding of disabilities? I think it's because us as a society, we don't have a good understanding of disabilities, despite 25% or
Yeah.
more of the population of the world being disabled, and despite it being the one marginalized community that anybody can join at any time. We do not have a good understanding of disability. I think that the two main marginalized groups that are the most overlooked and that we excuse the harm of is disabled community and so ableism and fat phobia, I think, are the two isms that we don't tackle, that we seem to accept, that seem to be okay, that we seem to want to justify in some way, shape, or form. And it doesn't have anything to do with the number of people, the population, because again, at least 25% of people are disabled. But again, that's a whole nother topic for another day. But I think that's why many places of worship don't have an understanding of disabilities, because we as a people don't have a good understanding of disabilities. And a place of worship or a faith is just made up of its people, right?
And to that end, we're gonna, like, I can tell you, I've been to a bunch of Gurdwaras where there are chairs in the back, there are spaces that are carved out for wheelchairs, and I've been to a bunch of Gurdwaras where, like, it's just never crossed anybody's mind. And
Yep.
so that
Good,
is
good.
not reflective of the faith, it's a reflective of the people.
Absolutely, 100%.
That makes sense.
This kind of goes into it. I have actually started looking to, Deacon Fatal says, I have actually started to looking at churches on how they treat the homeless and the disabled. If you cannot or will not do either of these, it's just not the place for me. I spoke about this last time. One of the reasons I had such a hard time finding a new church home was because, yeah, those are my bare minimums. So you need to be taking care of the most vulnerable among us, right? And if you're not doing that as a church, what are you doing? What are you here for? What is your purpose, right? At least for the Christian church, because that's what you claim to stand on. That's what you claim to be about. And so if homeless people and disabled people, if the most marginalized, if the most vulnerable among us can't even go to you for support, if you're not taking care of them, what are you doing? You're just basically useless to me. But anyways, it's another thing for another time. Tanya D says, I was about to say I need a glossary of terms. That would be good content to post on your IG if you haven't already. So yes and no. So what we try to do, and we're going to continue to try to do, is put definitions of terms in our content, like as we do it. But we don't want to focus our content just on like Sikhi 101, right? Because again, we're not here to really teach about Sikhi, but we do want to be more mindful that we want to make sure our content, our conversations are as accessible as possible. And that includes defining terms and making sure people know what we're talking about and that they can follow along. So we will keep trying to do a better job about that. Let us see. Can you ask the panel what songs they like when they? I don't know what that word.
They're like when appropriate.
Oh, like when it's appropriate, what songs they like? Like just random songs or just like I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Deeks, if you're still here, let me know. Okay. Let me see. Have you noticed a pattern in the demographics of people who say you're trying to be Indian? It's usually non-Punjabi people. It's usually non-Indian people who make that accusation, which I think is very interesting. I think it's similar to you know how they'll say like they'll say Americans complain about cultural appropriation where the real people, right? So whether it's Mexican Americans complaining about appropriation or Black Americans speaking about appropriation, where, you know, Africans on the continent maybe don't give a damn about the issue, or Mexicans might not give a damn about the issue, which I think both are valid, right? They have a different experience. Like Deep said, the Black American experience is specific to, you know, it's very specific. The same thing is true for Mexican American. They have a very specific experience. Mexican American experience is not the same as the Mexican experience, right? It's just different. So it makes sense. There's a creator that oh, I'm so mad I'm blanking on her name. If I have time, I'll try to look it up. But she is Nigerian, and she talks about a lot of things happening here in America with Black Americans. And she has a great understanding of, hey, our experience is different than yours. Yeah, we're both Black because that's a social construct that we've all sort of been lumped under, but we have a very different experience. You're growing up in Nigeria around people who look like you, and you have that culture. And then us growing up here in America, where our culture is constantly denied of us. We're, you know, constantly denied of having a culture, and it's constantly stripped of us and taken and stolen and all that stuff, is a very different experience. And so it makes sense that we would have a problem with you coming and appropriating our culture in the same way where Mexicans in Mexico would be like, I see that as great and I welcome it. And I think both are valid. I don't think either one is wrong. They're just different. And you have to be like mindful and okay of that, right? Different places are different. Let's see. Can you start me with at least a book? If you're talking about a book on Sikhi, I have some books on 1984 that Nov just recommended. I don't know. Do you guys have any books off top about Sikhi? I don't know if I've read any books. I think most of my knowledge has come from like mentors and things I read online and like videos and going to the Gurdwara and talking to people.
Yeah. I don't know it depends, kind of like, I mean, a book. I can think of books that are about Sikhi. There's so many that you can like literally just type Sikh into Amazon and you'll find a book. But in terms of understanding the stories of Sikh American, one specific book I can recommend is Valerie Kaur. She wrote See No Stranger, because See No Stranger was Guru Nanak Dev Ji's call to, you know, you should live and experience oneness so much that the stranger is just a part of you that you do not know yet. And so the way that you're looking at the world is not even seeing strangers, you're seeing the oneness of the creator who created all of this. And so she has a very specific story about Sikhs in America post 9/11, about
Mm.
organizing and being an activist, about generational traumas, about understanding how Sikhi informs the way that her approach to love as an ethic. Because, you know, in Christianity, they talk about love too. And there are some Christians out there who practice and live that love. But there are also,
Mm-hmm.
just like there are some Sikhs who do not do that, there are also some
Yeah.
Christians who also do not do that.
Yeah.
And so she put a kind of she organized the structure of the book around like loving others, loving your opponents, and loving yourself. And so that's kind of how the book is broken down into these three sections, each with three chapters. I think starting there, there's so much to grasp onto in that book in terms of the narrative, but also in terms of how kind of academic and rigorous a book it is, in terms of not love as a naive, fleeting feeling, but as a practice, as a verb, as something you do time and again, as a choice you make.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to check that out. I'm familiar with Valerie Kaur. So I didn't know about that book, but that's I'm gonna have to add that to my list. I've got
Same.
some books on 1984 that Nov has recommended that I'm gonna be getting into. I visited a black owned bookstore, a black woman owned bookstore out here, and I kind of went ham not too long ago. So I'm on a no not buy any more books freeze right now, but I think I might be breaking that soon because I'm gonna have to check that out. Um, Okay, somebody said favorite shows. Does anybody? I don't have any that I can mention off top. Does anybody have any that they would like to mention or?
Mm,
I mean, it's hard to say favorite, but I can say ones that are germane to this conversation.
Mm,
And so, germane to this conversation, you know, Gurbani speaks in so many ways because it's devotional hymns, it's devotional poetry, and so it's sung, and so it's like a vibration.
mm-hmm,
Um, Germane to this is, Guru Gobind Singh Ji. He wrote in Japsab about narage, narange, narupe, nareke. And so this means like beyond color, beyond love, beyond shape, beyond form. And that oneness of how we are called to live and called to see each other, and why would we even repeat those words? Like, why would we repeat that? It's like to remind ourselves of the oneness of creation. And we can hold that to be true. Like, Sikhs can
mm,
believe that to be absolutely true, that we are beyond that. However, at the same time, we can still acknowledge that there's something very real in the specificity of the lived experiences of disabled people, of queer people, of Black people, of people who are othered and marginalized. And we can orient to being curious about that, and we can orient to lifting those people up.
amen, amen. All right. Deacon Fatal. First of all, military standards for hair were made for
yes.
abled white men.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
I don't know too
Absolutely.
much about the military. I've got my own issues with the military, but yes, that I think we can all agree on that. I mean, first of all, I think the better question is, or it might be easier to say, what wasn't
Pretty
designed
much.
for able straight white men? What part of this country and in our laws and our this and our that wasn't designed with them in mind or with them at the forefront? But 100%, we talked about military standards. For those who are maybe joining after that conversation, we talked about military standards. We have two of our guests, one in the Army, one in the Navy, and they talked about their issues and their struggles, getting waivers for to be able to wear their turbans and keep their casts and things of that nature. So yeah, absolutely. Um, and then Deacon Fatal said, hope Muhammad is going to get in that class action lawsuit. So yeah, for those who don't know, we passed the Crown Act not too long ago, which was laws that protect Black people, not just Black women, but Black people in the workplace and in spaces. You can no longer be fired for wearing your hair a certain way. That just passed a couple years ago. We had
I
to
didn't know
pass
that.
laws to get that to stop from happening, right? I remember when I worked at Best Buy in Atlanta, I went in and I was wearing I was wearing like silver hoop earrings, which are very common for Black girls and Latina girls or whatever, and Black girls and Latinas or Latinas. And I, the manager was like, those earrings are too big, and he said some word that kind of was like, it wasn't like ghetto, but it was something that was like, you're on the border. Be careful of what you say next, right? And then he proceeded to say, because again, at the time I had locks, and they were a lot longer than this. They weren't colored any wild colors. They just the color of my hair. And he said, as though he was doing me a favor, like he was gonna let me keep my locks. He wasn't gonna force me to change my locks or like to change my hair. And I was like, what are you saying right now? Now, mind you, our LP, the guy that works in loss prevention that stands at the door with the yellow polo on, if you've ever been to a Best Buy, there's the loss prevention guy who's like kind of like security. He had a mohawk, shaved sides, a bright neon colored mohawk. But my presentation was unprofessional. My locks were unprofessional, but his mohawk was suitable for Best Buy's code of dress or whatever.
I
Wild.
have something to
So
add to that. A
yeah.
similar experience. This was actually a couple months ago. Because remember I mentioned of the PFB and everything else like that. So we had an outgoing uh, higher enlisted person one day that ran into me while we were in because I was overseas at this point in what we call the DFAC dining facility, and he comes over to me at this point. Now, I had been kind of still trying to do the whole shaving and everything. I didn't have what's called a shaving profile at the time, but I still just had my mustache. And he actually pulled me aside about even the mustache and was like, "Hey, why don't you do something for me?" And this was a black man that was saying this. So this is to reiterate the fact that, of course, these standards or the white supremacy or the anti-blackness comes from us as well. And this person felt like they were doing the right thing and doing right by me, but he was like, "Hey, you got that mustache?" Or that's like, "Yes, yes, sir." And he's like, I want you to do me a favor. Next time you're over there, when we're over there, where all the pictures of all the, the majors and everybody else in the army, I want you to take a look at them real quick. If you notice, none of them have any facial hair. And in my mind, I'm also thinking, yeah, it also ain't none of them black. But
I mean that goes back to when I was saying, I don't know that Guru Nanak made these hair or turban mandates with African hair in mind. And like Deacon Fatal said, a lot of these standards were made with white abled people in mind. Yeah, so I don't know if a lot of people know this, but shaving, especially when you have curlier hair, if you have kinkier hair, if you have anything other than type 1, type 2 hair, shaving can be difficult. You have a much higher chance of having ingrown hairs and like razor burn and just all kinds of problems. And not just that, but you can also keloid, right? So
mhm.
I keloid really bad. I'm trying to like, I don't know if I can I'm like I have keloids on my abdomen, and I'm like hesitant to show them because I don't want to be like flashing anybody. But
Look at
for
this.
those for those who don't know, like you can keloid really bad, right? And I have seen black men from shaving, just from shaving, who have
Yep.
keloids in this area because of that. I'm gonna go ahead and show you. So trigger warning, if you don't want to see my abdomen, don't look, but I really do want y'all to see like how it doesn't take a lot. In
Yeah.
2006 I had surgery, and I had it's called laparoscopic surgery, which means they put
Okay.
like 4 little cuts in your abdomen, right? They stick a camera in one, and the whole point is for it to be less invasive, right? You
Hmm.
have a smaller scar, and it's going to be more beautiful and heal great and whatever. And they stick a camera in, and they do what they got to do, and they pull the thing out instead of just cutting you open like wide open, right? So you have like these 4 small scars. Well, because I'm black, and again, this goes back to we need to acknowledge our differences because those differences mean different things. It means I have a different lived experience, right? So those 4, mind you, 4 small scars, right? Okay, so this is what I actually have now. Let me show you. So,
Okay.
right?
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. So I had a cut right here. These are all connected now. Okay. I
Hmm.
had a small cut here, a small cut here, and 2 small cuts here. Right. That that is now what I have. And it's not just a cosmetic thing, right? I don't care about how it looks as I
Yeah.
consider it like my war wounds, whatever, right?
Yeah.
However, one thing that people don't know about keloids is that they can be very painful. And so if
Yep.
I don't get them injected every so often, like a couple times a year, they can be so painful and so sensitive. I can't even let my shirt touch them. Like my shirt just touching my keloid causes so much pain that it is out of this world. And this is me, somebody who has a chronic illness that is characterized by pain. So yeah, if you're talking about men and you are requiring them to shave, but you're not taking into consideration like the ingrowns and the problem that comes with shaving so regularly
every day,
every day.
every
Yeah, because
single day.
you're expected to shave every day to keep that clean shave. That is a problem. And there are waivers now. I don't know if it's in all branches. I'm not really sure. I don't know, Ray, if you
Mhm.
know, but there are
Yeah.
waivers now for black men who have those problems with shaving
But
because
the
huh?
problem is, there's still so many people that don't want to understand
Yes.
because of the fact that I happen to be across and I see a lot of videos and I'm connected to you. You know how algorithms do. All the algorithms know that I'm in the military. So on all of the social media, they're always showing me military stuff. So anyway, I see people in the comments consistently talking about, oh well, such and such with beards, but that wouldn't be a thing if you were a specific type of group that gets everything that they want. And it's like, pause, that's definitely not true. But second of all, you really don't know what you're talking about. It's not somebody just wanting this because they can't shave. Being a medic myself, by the way, I have soldiers that come in looking for shaving profiles and stuff like that I deal with, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of people that I have to educate the difference between razor burn and PFB. Some of them tried to, because they've only experienced razor burn from improper shaving. They think that they know what they're talking about, and they're applying that to black people, black men, or black people too. And I'm like, it's not the same thing. It's not we just want to be special, so that's why we're asking for this.
Oh yeah, they're good for just saying you just want to be special or you're obsessed with race and why you always got to bring it up and everything. Everybody, don't we all bleed the same blood? Actually, no. I have a blood disorder, so no, we don't all bleed the same blood. Actually. Okay, let's see anything else. Kimmy Locke saying thank you for your time and insight I just said insight and Sorma at the same time. Thank you for your time and insight, Sorma. Uh let's see. I think that's about it. Anybody else? All right, I think that's about it. Did I miss anything? Kimmy, let me know if I missed anything. Oh, thoughts on Sahaj Darif Way 4-6. Anybody want to tackle that or touch that?
I think maybe like next episode, like we shouldn't be like starting on a new conversation, but
Yeah.
real quick, so we were talking about PFB. The same thing happens on the back of
Can,
the
can y'all
scalp.
can y'all same explain just PFB real quick
Sure.
for those who don't know?
PFB stands for pseudo folliculitis barbae, and this is a specific skin condition that comes from ingrown hairs of men with curlier hairs in the beard line, and well, actually, even women too. Women who get hirsutism can also get PFB, so it's not actually just limited to men. But the back of the head, if you go to the regular barbershop and they cut too close, you get something in the back called acne keloidalis nuchae, or
Mm-hmm.
AKNs. So those are the two acronyms, PFB and AKN, to be aware of, that like not all hair is the same, and we need to individualize our approach to our hair care.
Absolutely.
Basically what happens for me, and I've told this people, I like jokes, but I tell people when I'm trying to describe it to them before, when I show some of my soldiers too, because one of the things I'm looking for when I'm screening a person for it, when they come in saying that they have it and in the military, is I am taking a look. I actually do want to see the area, because a lot of times you're going to see a bit more scarring. You're likely going to see some hyperpigmentation as well, and those are some of the things that you're going to see that's separate. Versus I have some people that's come in and it's just razor burn. They have a little reddening or something there because maybe their shaving process is wrong. But that's
Yeah.
the reason that we also need to find out what your shaving pattern is. But a lot of people do get offended when you tell them that it's going to be more frequent in a person with curlier hair. And then they try to say in the military, to be like, oh, you're saying just for black people. And I'm like, actually, technically, no. Because I actually have approved a shaving
Yeah.
profile for a white person before.
Yes.
They were a white person with curlier hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's again, to be clear, again, I'm saying again, but for those who don't, race is a social construct, right? But it being a social construct doesn't mean that it doesn't have real world implications.
Hmm.
And so the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's not even necessarily about the race. It's about in this particular instance, it's about the hair. It's about the texture of hair. It's about the way that your hair grows. And so yes, if you have curlier hair, it can also be an issue for you. It's just that who in this country or society is more likely to have curly hair is more likely to be black people. But again,
Us.
black people don't all have the same texture of hair. So yeah.
Yep.
Kimmy, let me know. I think Kimmy said there's more, but I'm not sure if I missed. I don't want to miss any comments.
Let me
Um,
see.
any did y'all see anything that we've missed? We said we're going to talk about the thoughts on Sahajdari for Sikh men. Oh, can you shave your body hair or is it against the religion? So I don't know if anybody else wants to tackle this one in particular. It is said to keep your body the way that God made it, and so yeah, so that typically means not shaving. I think that's more of, well, I'm not going to say it's more of an issue. I mean, in general, it might be more of an issue for men, people who grow facial hair. But also, something that I think is, and see, this is something that is, I think, more of an issue for maybe South Asians, right? Who might have a lot of body hair. Like for me, if I don't shave my legs for a year, you really can't tell. Like you can't tell. Not only because my skin is darker, but because I'm really not that hairy. Like I already said, my hair is not that thick to begin with. So that is, I guess it's a privilege in the sense that like we live in a society where we expect women and female presenting people and femmes to shave and to be hairless like a seal, because pedophilia is rampant in our country. But anyways, we want,
Prepubescent child.
yeah, we want adult women to look like prepubescent childs and be just naked, no hair anywhere on their bodies. But yeah, I don't know if anybody want to say anything about that, because
So,
it's not really an issue for me like to not shave. I mean,
so generally, one should not shave or cut hair anywhere on the body. I think that that answers the question.
Yep.
yep,
Yep.
yep,
But
that's
also,
what the faith
religious
says.
practices are also highly individualized.
Yeah, I was just about to
Yes.
say that's what
Yep.
the faith practice says, and you need to practice Sikhi the way that you need to practice Sikhi. It's an individual
Yep.
experience. One thing you will never see is me going around policing other people. The only time I will bring it up is if somebody's trying to police me. Somebody with a short haircut and no beard is telling me I can't wear a cap while you walking around with a short haircut and no beard. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm not policing your Sikhi. Don't police my. Don't worry. That's the only time you hear me bring it up because everybody's faith practice should be individualized. And like I
Yeah.
said, you need to really think about the essence of it and think about why the instructions and the mandates are what they are, how they apply to you. It really needs to be an individualized practice, like Deep said. All right.
I wanted to say this last thing too, and I think it might have been something that would probably resonate for Neek too. I know she's gone, but one of the problems that I had, even with everything as far as working through the waiver and everything else like that, one of the things that's difficult on the outside of that when you don't have it, if you are a person that does want to observe it regularly, you get to a point where it's like, hey, most of my time is spent at work. I spend 8 hours of my day at work. If I'm unable to wear these things that are special to me there, you get to a point where you're just like, why bother? I get home from work. So for the most of the time, I think most recently I started a lot more because I want to do it for me. But for a while, I was just like, why bother? Because I can't do it for where I spend most of my time of my life anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Deacon Fatal, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. I actually met Deacon Fatal. I would consider Deacon Fatal a homie. I met Deacon Fatal on one of my favorite YouTube channel. If you guys are ever interested in legal breakdowns, like we just got through with the Jonathan Majors case, there's a bunch of other things. I follow a number of creators on LawTube. Boss Attorney Bree is one of them. Kimmy, I don't know if you got a chance to drop it in the chat, but Boss Attorney Bree is a great one. She's a black woman. She's a lawyer, so she gives a really dope perspective. But that's where we met. We met doing like some moderation and going to that every Tuesday and Thursday. They go live. Speaking of every Tuesday and Thursday, and thank you again, Deacon Fatal. Good night. Appreciate you coming
Good
through.
night.
Tanya
Thank
D, thank
you.
you for coming through. Everybody who's been here hanging out with us. We didn't really have an end time for this. I just wanted to make sure we got through as much as we could get through because we're gonna be going live on Wednesday nights. It might not be every single Wednesday, but we're gonna be going live on Wednesday nights. I know Ray's gonna be there. Nika's probably gonna come through, and we'll have like a rotating cast of people. So we'll be able to answer questions more frequently, and they won't be as long, right? They'll just be like a lot shorter, and a nice hangout session on Wednesday nights. We don't have an exact time right now in mind, but it's gonna be sometime between like 4 and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right? So we know that, like, for our folks in the UK and in other places, that might be difficult to catch, and we totally understand that. But for anybody who can and wants to, we're gonna start that on the 27th. So this Wednesday coming. Yeah, this Wednesday coming up. I had a brain fart. I was like, "Is that this Wednesday coming up?" Um, yeah, so this Wednesday coming up, we'll be going live Wednesday nights right here on the YouTube channel, and we will probably do go stream on Instagram and YouTube. And once we get a certain number of followers on TikTok, we'll stream over there too. But for now, it's gonna be YouTube and Instagram. And anybody who wants to come through and ask questions or spill some tea, or you want to join in on the live, you're welcome to do so. We're going to have different topics and talk about different things. I'm going to continue the conversation. I think that's going to be the best way to do it, because a lot of times posting content and then, having different people interpret it differently, and we're in the comment section trying to clear things up. I think it'll be a lot easier if we can just say, hey, next live, we'll go ahead and address this, or next live, we'll go ahead and address that. So that's what we're going to do. Oh yeah, Kimmy Locker put it in the chat. Legal commentary and coverage, Boss Attorney Bree on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I know Tyler Chow is another one. I think I said it wrong the last time. Tyler Chow is another one called the Hollywood Attorney, or the Creator's Attorney. An Asian American woman who I love, and I'm saying these things because it is important, because you get different perspectives because of somebody's background. And so while people are like, why does the race matter? Why does their background matter? Because it's a different perspective. It colors their perspective and how you think about things and how you view the world and your experience. And so that's why. Natalie Lawyer Chick is another one who's really, really dope, who I get to watch a lot. I think that's it. I don't know if you guys have anybody that you watch on a regular basis that you want to mention. But I think that's it. Let me check Instagram, make sure. That was the last question. So I appreciate y'all. So we will see you guys. And Deep and Ray, don't go anywhere. We're gonna end the live, but don't go anywhere. Just want to wrap things up real quick. But I appreciate y'all coming through. I appreciate you guys staying this long, giving your input and all of your thoughts, and being so open and so honest. Same thing with Neek and Sorma. I really appreciate y'all. This has been dope. This has been fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Any last words? Any last thoughts from y'all?
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, y'all. Waheguru ji ka khalsa, waheguru ji ki fateh.
Waheguru ji ka khalsa, waheguru ji.
Waheguru ji ki fateh.